Chapter 2014. Who are you? How did you appear on the Black Star ship? Zhang Xian scolded. Su Yu stared at the few medium star-level fighters, not shifting his attention in the slightest. Asking so many questions won't do you any good. Get your people to evacuate the Black Star ship, or else. Zhang Xian clenched her teeth and shouted, all of you leave. The deputy commander was being held hostage, and they stood there hesitantly, not knowing how to deal with it. I'll say it one last time, all of you leave. Zhang Xian said angrily, thinking that they were all idiot. Did they want to see her die? Under the repeated orders, the group of 5 crown emperors and related personnel all evacuated the Black Star ship. Can you let me go now? Zhang Xian said coldly. Su Yu said calmly, I will let you live after you leave safely. Yi Mingxuan's eyes flashed, but she did not speak. Set sail, Su Yu said. The target is a 5-star civilization in the safe zone. As long as he could find such a large-scale civilization, he could use the transportation portal to return to the 4 symbols civilization instantly. Unexpectedly, Yi Mingxian and Zhang Xian both looked confused. The former repeated, Where? Su Yu was slightly surprised, asking, Where is this? The corners of Zhang Xian's mouth twitched, and she looked at Yi Mingxian. I say, who did you Nirvanas invite to rescue you, but you don't even know the way? Yi Mingxian shook her head. He is not from Nirvanas. To be precise, he is not from our civilization. She raised her eyes and looked into Su Yu's eyes. She said, Forgive me for being blunt, but there are 93,612 5-star civilizations in our Rain Fairy civilization system, but I have never heard of the 4 symbols civilization. I think you are not from our civilization system, are you? Su Yu froze. Civilization. This time, Yi Mingxian was also surprised. How did you get here? You don't even know about the civilization? Zhang Xian covered her forehead. I can't accept this. I was actually captured alive by an idiot who knows nothing. After pausing for a moment, Yi Ming said, The so-called civilization system is a radiation-like civilization region with a 6-star civilization as the center. Our civilization system's 6-star civilization is the Rain Immortal Ecliptic Temple, so it is called the Rain Immortal Ecliptic Temple. What is the name of the Zodiac Palace in your civilization? Yi Mingxian asked. Su Yu was at a loss. It turned out that there was more than one ecliptic palace. He had no idea what the civilization he was in was called the Zodiac Temple. After a moment of silence, he said, How many ecliptic palaces are there? Yi Ming said, Currently there are only 4 that are known. They are the Rain Immortal Ecliptic Temple, the Thunder Immortal Ecliptic Temple, the Wind Immortal Ecliptic Temple, and the Fire Immortal Ecliptic Temple. Based on what we know so far? Su Yu pondered and asked, Apart from the 4 great ecliptic palaces, is there a new one? Yes. Legend has it that there is an even more ancient civilization system. However, it is only a legend after all. Many years have passed, and no one has ever reached a higher civilization system. Yi Ming said. Indeed, when he flipped through the ancient documents of the Taiji sect, the furthest he understood was only the Ecliptic Hall. Furthermore, the description was not detailed, and it was clear that he did not know much about it. At the very least, he did not even know what kind of ecliptic palace the Ming faction was. Right now, he could not even figure out which civilization the Taiji sect was in. Yi Mingxian looked at him and said, After returning to Nirvana, I might be able to help you look up relevant information and help you return. That was the only way. Su Yu had to change his plan of finding a 5-star civilization and then teleporting back. Let's go. Under Su Yu's control and Yi Mingxuan's command, the Black Star ship was reactivated and shuttled through the void at an extremely fast speed. Not long after the Black Star ship had traveled a certain distance, they could see from afar that numerous gigantic warships were cruising around, forming a circle with them in the center. At this moment, the giant warships sped up and surrounded them. They must have already known that Zhang Xian had been captured and were hurrying over to surround and intercept them. It seems like they are not willing to give up. Yi Mingxuan's beautiful eyes released a dangerous arc. She said calmly, "There is no need to avoid it. Accelerate and crash into it." The black starship was like a pitch-black speck of dust. Under the pressure of the giant warships, not only did it not slow down and retreat, but it also accelerated and crashed into it head-on. As such, the giant warships had no choice but to dodge to prevent the captive Zhang Xian from dying tragically in the collision. The Black Star ship charged forward domineeringly. The giant warships along the way gave way for fear of hurting the captive Zhang Xian. Finally, a gap appeared. The Black Star ship teleported out and sailed into the boundless void. Su Yu secretly praised her. She was courageous, calm, and decisive. She had the demeanor of a talented commander. Yi Mingxuan's crystal-like eyes flickered with wisdom. She said, "From now on, we have 5 years to travel. I guess the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce will not give up on Zhang Xian easily. After all, she is the great-granddaughter of Vice President Zhang of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. During this period, there will be experts coming to rescue her. We have to be vigilant at all times." Su Yu said, "Send a message to Nirvana and ask them to send a rescue team." "No." Yi Mingxian shook her head calmly. "We were ambushed this time. To a large extent, there is a traitor. With the power of Nirvana, it is impossible for them not to notice the existence of the ambush. There is only one explanation, and that is that a certain person of high status suppressed important information and caused us to fall into the ambush without knowing it. If we ask for help from Nirvana now, what will they do? At that time, what awaited them would not be help but a fatal interception." This woman was still rational. Su Yu stared behind him and said thoughtfully, "Should we look for the nearest civilization to land?" "Why?" Yi Mingxian asked. "The speed of the Black Star ship is no weaker than intercivilization teleportation." Su Yu shook his head and said, "Traveling among civilizations is more conducive to hiding our tracks." Yi Mingxian pondered and nodded. "All right." Not long after, they landed on a 4-star civilization. Yi Mingxian condensed a talisman of the Black Star ship in her palm and pressed it on the deck of the Black Star ship. A miraculous scene unfolded. The enormous Black Star ship folded on its own and finally turned into a thin piece of paper. It stuck to her palm like a talisman. Zhang Xian was not surprised. Only Su Yu was quite surprised. "Doesn't your civilization have it?" Yi Mingxian asked curiously. Su Yu shook his head lightly. "I have never heard of it. Strange, the civilizations of the 4 great ecliptic palace should have popularized armor weapons." Su Yu was stunned. "What is armor weapon?" Yi Mingxian said. "The so-called armor weapon is a combination of mecha and martial arts. For example, the Black Star ship is a mechanical existence, but it exists in the form of martial arts talisman. This is one of the representatives of the combination of armor and martial arts." Zhang Xian looked Su Yu up and down. "How backward is the civilization you belong to? In the 4 great ecliptic palaces, even the lowest level 1-star civilization has popularized armor weapons." As she spoke, a talisman appeared in Zhang Xian's palm and she pressed it against her chest. The metallized armor slowly folded and turned into a rune, revealing the inside of the armor. It was a beautiful woman in a black dress with light makeup and loose hair. Her attire made Su Yu feel as if he had transmigrated back to Earth. At this moment, Yi Mingxian was the same. She removed the armor on her body and revealed a slender woman in a t-shirt and casual pants. Her cold temperament made her look cold and elegant. Su Yu stared at the two of them and stammered, "Was there a barbaric civilization called Earth here?" "Earth? Never heard of it." The two of them shook their heads. Su Yu thought carefully. He had never heard of the existence of martial artists on Earth. It was probably a speck of dust that could not even be considered a civilization. He had never thought about how he had transmigrated to Shunyue Island. But now, looking at the attire of the two of them, he could not help but be in a trance. Could it be that his soul had been transferred from Earth to Shunyue Island by chance? But with his current mastery of the soul, he deeply understood how weak the soul of a normal living creature was. It would be destroyed the moment it left the body. How could he have transmigrated to Shunyue Island? This was a question he had never thought about before. Now that he thought about it, it was filled with all sorts of incredulity. Let's leave first. Once we are safe, I will think of a way to help you find out where you came from. Yi Mingxuan's cold temperament was threatening. Zhan Xian said, I will lead the way. I am the most familiar with this place. She led the way as if she was very familiar with them. Yi Mingxian said coldly, have some self-awareness as a captive, okay? As she spoke, she took out a piece of talisman and injected it with the power of desolation. The talisman turned into a mechanical chain. One end was in Yi Mingxuan's hand, and the other was a shackle that bound Zhan Xian's hands. Zhan Xian did not care. I will not escape. Escaping is not good for me. If she escaped, she would likely be injured by Su Yu and Yi Mingxian. It was better to obediently surrender. Once she reached nirvana, she believed that her grandfather would redeem her. After thinking this through, she was very resigned to her fate as a captive. The journey to the intercivilization transportation portal may take 10 days. Without me leading the way, it may take even longer, Zhan Xian said. Yi Mingxian did not say a word. She took out a talisman, and a four-wheeled mecha chariot appeared. Seeing this object, Su Yu almost screamed. The mecha chariot in front of him, apart from its indestructible material, had the same basic principles as the armored vehicles on Earth. Are you used to it? Yi Mingxian looked at Su Yu's surprised expression. How could Su Yu get used to it? Each and every one of them was a complete shock to his vision. Humph, even with the speed of the Kylan armor, it would take half a day to arrive, Zhan Xian said with dissatisfaction. Yi Mingxian snorted. Do you still dislike it? Be careful, I'll put you behind the chariot and make you run. Get in. Yi Mingxian grabbed Zhan Xian and jumped in. Su Yu was slightly stunned. Wait a minute, half a day? This is a 4-star civilization. Their cultivation levels were not lower than Su Yu's, right? Why don't we use flying? If we fly, it won't take more than a few breaths, right? The two women were stunned, and they looked at Su Yu in bewilderment. Yi Mingxian looked at him strangely. Fly? The territory of a 4-star civilization is vast, and even the fastest flying mecha would take 6 hours. Half a day for my most advanced Kylan armor is already an incredible limit. Su Yu was stunned. I mean, wouldn't it be faster for a person to fly by themselves? What? A person to fly by themselves? Are you sure you're not wrong? Zhan Xian was shocked. She scratched her head and looked at Su Yu. To be honest, I really don't understand you. Yi Mingxian also said. I don't know how the people of the civilization department train, but in our 4 universal civilizations, the speed of a human's flight is quite slow, only twice as fast as walking. Chapter 2015. After seeing their powerful mechas, Su Yu had thought that the development of their martial paths had reached the pinnacle. But why had they not even mastered the most basic flight? Put away the Qilin armor first, Su Yu said. I will try it with you to see if the flight I mentioned is the same as the flight you know. Yi Mingxian felt more and more strange, but put away the armor as she was told. She looked at Su Yu without blinking to see what he was going to do next. Hold on tightly to my arms, remember not to let go, Su Yu said. Yi Mingxian and Zhan Xian hesitated, grabbing Su Yu's sleeves unnaturally. Zhan Xian said angrily, Are the people of the civilization department so open-minded? It is not common for a woman to grab a man's arm in our civilization department. Su Yu was speechless, only holding on to his sleeves, afraid that they would be thrown away immediately. Hey! I can't explain it to you. Su Yu wrapped his arms around their waist. As they cried out in alarm and resisted, Su Yu activated the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole and instantly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, they stopped again. The two women's hair was messy, their clothes messy. Is it fun to take advantage of me? Yi Mingxian broke free from Su Yu, her face slightly red, staring at him with displeasure. Zhan Xian pushed her arm. Hey, you shut up! Yi Mingxian shouted without turning her head, glaring at Su Yu. Zhan Xian continued to push her, stuttering, No, look. Look at what? Yi Mingxian glared at Zhan Xian angrily. But this stare froze Yi Mingxian on the spot. This place is… Zhan Xian was also petrified on the spot, even forgetting to break free from Su Yu's arm. She stuttered. This is the center of the civilization, near the transportation portal. The two women stared in shock at the city full of skyscrapers in front of them. In the center of the city there were two giant towers rising from the ground. In the center of the towers there was a brilliant light screen like the Milky Way, with countless flying mechas shuttling back and forth. Yi Mingxian was in a daze for a long time, then took out a compass-like machine. It showed that she had arrived at the coordinates of the transportation portal. Hey, this joke isn't funny. Zhan Xian looked at the huge city without blinking and said in surprise. Yi Mingxian looked at Su Yu and asked, Are we hallucinating? Su Yu was helpless. He grabbed their wrists again and said, Look carefully. This time, Su Yu went from slow to fast, and when he reached his limit, he used the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole to return to the place where he had just landed. The two girls were deeply petrified. They said in a daze, Back again? Yi Mingxian covered her red lips and said in shock, How can a human's speed be so fast? Even the fastest flying mecha can't be this fast. Su Yu said, Let me ask you again, do you know what a divine technique is? Do you know what law is? The two girls shook their heads blankly, indicating that they had never heard of it. Then, where did your cultivation bases come from? Su Yu asked. Of the two of them, one was an early-stage 3-crown divine warrior, while the other was an intermediate-stage 4-crown divine warrior. How much awakened power do you think we have in our bodies? Yi Mingxian was extremely curious and tried to release a pure desolate power. Su Yu nodded. You don't know how to cultivate at all. Where did such a powerful desolate power come from? Zhan Xian said in surprise, What cultivation? This is the power of awakened power. When you look at the liquid of awakening in your body, it will give birth to awakened power. The amount of awakened power depends on the individual's constitution. Hearing this, Su Yu was indescribably shocked. In his civilization faculty, cultivating desolate power meant becoming a divine warrior of heaven and earth, and he did not know how much suffering one had to go through. But the two people in front of him said it so casually. Can everyone in your civilization system awaken the power of awakening? Yi Mingxian shook her head. That's not the case. Awakened power has several stages of transformation. Some stay at the initial stage and no longer evolve. It is very rare for our awakened power to evolve to this stage. That's more like it. I understand, Su Yu said. Your civilization faculty focuses on developing mecha, but your understanding of the martial path is very shallow. There were gains and losses. They focused on mecha, but the martial path itself was in a blank state. What cultivation? We have never heard of it, Zhan Xian said. Su Yu stared at her and said, For example, the black chain that I used to subdue you. That is the result of my cultivation. You should have felt the danger of the chain, right? Yes, I feel like I'm dying. Those useless bodyguards also seem to have realized that the chain is very powerful, but I thought it was your mecha's weapon. Zhan Xian said in surprise. Su Yu let out a long breath. It seemed that he was not completely useless in this unfamiliar civilization faculty. He still had his own expertise. All right, I'll explain the martial path cultivation to you when I have time. Let's leave this place first. I can sense that they are about to reach a 4-star civilization. Suyu looked up at the sky. Yi Mingxian took out the compass machine, and it flashed with countless light spots that were slowly approaching. My goodness, those battleships are still half a 4-star civilization away from us, and you can actually sense them with your intuition? Yi Mingxian was deeply moved. Zhang Xian's eyes were also full of admiration. Are you a god? The corners of Su Yu's mouth twitched slightly. The deity realm, in his civilization faculty, should be a very low-level existence, right? If the two of them were placed in that civilization faculty, they would already be superior deities, and now they were asking Su Yu if he was a god. We'll talk about it later. Su Yu held the two women in his arms again and teleported to the transportation portal in an instant. Without waiting for the two women to scream, his figure turned into a remnant shadow and directly rushed into the portal. A passenger ship was slowly sailing into the giant transportation portal. A bored man was sitting in the seat. He was bored, looking at the scenery outside the glass window. All of a sudden, he felt something flash past his eyes. Is that a laser? The man scratched his head with a suspicious look. All of a sudden, his vision went dark, and something appeared out of thin air. Hello, can I ask which civilization this transportation portal leads to? Suyu tried his best to put on a warm smile. Unexpectedly, the man was so scared that his heart was in his throat. He stared at Suyu in disbelief, as well as the two women in his arms who had lost all color in their faces. He stammered, unable to say a word. After waiting for a moment, there was no response. Suyu said helplessly, "Forget it, you'll know when you get there." Swish. The three of them disappeared on the spot, leaving only a remnant shadow. Hence, in the passenger ship, there was a ghostly shriek. Ah, ghost. Suyu shook his head and said to the two women, "Aren't you people from the civilization faculty a little too timid?" The two women were already pale. It was their first time experiencing such unprepared flight at an astonishing speed. It could be said that their stomachs were turned upside down, and their beautiful faces turned pale. Hearing that, the two women stared at Suyu with a strange look. It meant that it was not that the people from the civilization faculty were too weak, but that he was too terrifying. Oh, alright. Let's go. Suyu rushed into the transportation portal and left instantly. At the same time, tens of thousands of huge battleships covered the sky above the civilization. Hurry, 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 get on the mecha flying ship. Small battleships, carrying 10 soldiers armed with mecha, entered the 4-star civilization one after another. In the command center, the deputy commander of the Eastern War Zone was in charge of this rescue operation. He was experienced and said, "The robbers arrived at the 4-star civilization a quarter of an hour ago. Our preliminary judgment is that their purpose is to use the transportation portal. It will take them at least 6 hours to get there. In other words, we have 6 hours of precious rescue time. The flying troops will be responsible for tracking and locking onto the target. The ground troops will follow quickly. We must intercept them at the transportation portal." All of a sudden, an important piece of information appeared in the reception room and was quickly presented to the deputy commander. Reporting to the deputy commander, the robbers have disappeared from the scanning screen. Our preliminary judgment is that they have left the 4-star civilization. The deputy commander said resolutely, "Impossible. It is impossible for them to travel the distance from the transportation portal in a quarter of an hour. Even the most advanced aircraft cannot reach such a speed." At that moment, another report was delivered. Reporting to the deputy commander, the robbers' signal appeared in another 4-star civilization. The deputy commander was shocked. How is that possible? How did they do it? But now was not the time to pursue the matter. He said, "After them." Arriving at the 4-star civilization, Su Yu's feet did not stop. He once again teleported to the transportation portal of the civilization and teleported a second time. After arriving at the next civilization, he teleported again. In just 2 hours, Su Yu had experienced no less than 10 civilization teleportations. It could be said that he had completely shaken off the enemy's pursuit. However, Su Yu looked up into the void and frowned slightly. He stood on the roof of a tall building and stopped. Phew! I can finally take a breather. Zhang Xian's small face was pale. She had experienced an unforgettable extreme flight. Yi Mingxian was not much better. She patted her chest, her eyes filled with deep awe. In the void, perhaps the speed of the battleship had the advantage, but in the civilization, Su Yu's flying was incomparably superior. Have we shaken them off? After 10 consecutive random teleportations, the enemy should have long lost their target. Su Yu lightly shook his head. No. How could that be? Yi Mingxian was surprised. Su Yu looked at the 2 women and finally fixed his gaze on Zhang Xian. His eyes turned pale white as he quietly watched Zhang Xian. The 2 women were once again shocked by Su Yu's strange eyes. After a moment, Su Yu's eyes returned to normal. He stared at Zhang Xian. No wonder we have been tracked. She has a tracking device on her body that emits waves. In your words, it is a signal. Yi Mingxian looked at Zhang Xian suspiciously and shook her head. I don't think so. I have checked her body with an instrument. If there is a similar tracking device, it cannot be hidden from me. Su Yu shook his head and said, Take off her clothes and carefully examine the center of her chest to see if there is a small cut. All of a sudden, Zhang Xian covered her chest, her face flushed. Ah! Stinky pervert, you! When did you peek at my chest? It's not just your chest. I have seen your entire body, Su Yu lightly said. Chapter 2016. Yi Mingxian walked over and pulled down Zhang Xian's shirt. Between the 2 voluptuous mounds, there was indeed a hair-thin incision. Yi Mingxian looked at Su Yu in surprise. How did you know? She didn't remember Zhang Xian taking off her clothes. Su Yu pointed to his own eyes and said, One of the divine martial techniques, the eye technique. Hearing that, Yi Mingxian immediately covered her chest, her face flushed. You saw mine. Nothing can block my sight, Su Yu said calmly. But, so what if I saw it? I won't have any improper thoughts about you. You should have known that the first time we met. Yi Mingxian couldn't help but be angry. There weren't many people who could say that he had seen her body so confidently. But, as he said, when they first met, she was probably less than a skeleton in his eyes. He didn't see her as a beauty at all. Humph! You people who only practice martial arts are really scary. Yi Mingxian snorted lightly, turned around, and took out a leaf-shaped mucus from Zhang Xian's chest. No wonder the detection equipment couldn't detect it. It's a liquid tracker. I didn't expect the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce to have developed such a thing in advance, Yi Mingxian said with relief. Zhang Xian's face was dejected, as if she had nothing left to live for. How could she really want to be captured? She was just putting on a show for Su Yu and Yi Mingxian. Now we should be able to say goodbye to the tracker, Su Yu said. Then, there were dozens of teleportations. A few days later, Su Yu and the others appeared in front of a civilization. The portal in the civilization was closed. Tens of thousands of merchant ships and battleships were waiting nearby. It seems that they have sealed off the portal in this area, Yi Mingxian said. This means that they have indeed lost us. Zhang Xian, on the other hand, rolled her eyes and said, Why don't you escort me to the commander of the local civilization? Seeing that I have been captured, he won't dare not open the portal. Do you think we are fools? Yi Mingxian rolled her eyes. In this way, they would be discovered by the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce after finally getting rid of the pursuers. We can only go through the Void Zone. Yi Mingxian took out the Black Star ship again and said, The pursuers have been left far behind, and it will be difficult for them to catch up with us. This trip should be safe. Su Yu nodded. The 3 of them drove the Black Star ship into the boundless void. Su Yu finally had the time to train. He consumed a 9-yin elixir and started to train in seclusion. In the blink of an eye, several years passed. The rest of the journey was exceptionally smooth. Apart from the occasional encounter with a few ignorant pirate ships, they did not encounter any other dangers. The journey was estimated to take 5 years, but Suyu had saved a lot of time because he had used the transportation gate at high speed dozens of times in a row. In the end, it only took them 3 years to successfully arrive at a huge 5-star civilization. The entire civilization was artificially molded with metal. Most of the buildings were mechanized high-rise buildings. On the road, auxiliary machines similar to the Chilean war chariot could be seen everywhere. Let's just come back like this, okay? Suyu came out of his training. After many years of accumulation, coupled with the 9-yin pill, he had finally pushed his cultivation to the peak of the 3-crown emperor stage. At this moment, he looked at the huge civilization in front of him and asked. Yi Mingxuan's eyes flickered with a cold light. Isn't it good to surprise some people? Do. When the Black Star ship approached the civilization, a loud alarm sounded in the civilization. Powerful weapons were aimed at the Black Star warship in the sky. Especially since this was where the military camp of the civilization was located. There were advanced mechas everywhere. In the center of the military camp, a group of high-level officials was having a discussion. It has been 5 years since the Black Star ship was destroyed. The new Black Star team has been reorganized, but the commander has not been decided. Do you have anyone to recommend? The person who spoke was the Supreme Commander of the Eastern Battle Zone, Long Lan. Sitting on both sides were the high-level officials of the Eastern Battle Zone, including 3 deputy commanders and 18 generals. Sigh, it is a pity that the famous commander, Yi Mingxian, was a god of war. If she were still alive, she would have been the cornerstone of my nirvana. A white-haired deputy commander sighed. Now that things have come to this, I only hope that the new deputy commander can carry forward the tradition of the Black Star team. I recommend Yi Mingxuan's former assistant, General Fan Qiushui. She is the person who understands the Black Star team the most, apart from Yi Mingxian. I also recommend Fan Qiushui. She is the most suitable person to lead the Black Star team. Seconded. The other 2 deputy commander-in-chief agreed. On the other hand, the 18 generals were silent, feeling strange. This was the first time the deputy commanders had such a unanimous opinion. Furthermore, Fan Qiushui had always been an assistant and had no experience in leading troop. Was it inappropriate to let him be the deputy commander of the Black Star team? What about you? Long Lan looked at the generals and asked for their opinion. Among them, only the general who originally belonged to Yi Mingxian had reservations and objected. The rest of the generals belonged to the other 3 deputy commanders. Although they felt it was inappropriate, they did not dare to object and all expressed their agreement. Long Lan sighed silently. Humans. It was rare for the 3 deputy commanders to have unanimous opinions. The reason, from his point of view, was actually very simple. Yi Mingxian was too outstanding. The youngest goddess of war had commanded 358 battles, big and small, and had never lost a single battle. Her military achievements had suppressed the 3 deputy commanders to the point that they could not even lift their head. If there were no surprises, the position of the future general would definitely be Yi Mingxian. With this lesson in mind, the 3 deputy commander-in-chief came to an agreement very tacitly. The new deputy commander-in-chief that was elected would definitely be within their control. The general even suspected that the reason for Yi Mingxuan's defeat had something to do with the 3 deputy commanders and Fan Qiushui. However, there was no evidence. Furthermore, 3 years had passed, and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce had never sent an emissary to submit the matter of exchanging hostages. There were only 2 reasons. First, Yi Mingxian had already died in battle. Second, the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce had captured Yi Mingxian, but they were afraid of her talent in commanding battles and were unwilling to return her. No matter what the result was, it would be a heavy blow to the Eastern Battle Zone. Now that everyone was asking for Fan Xiushui to be the deputy commander, Long Lan said, "Since everyone thinks that Fan Xiushui can do it," then, suddenly, the curtain of the military camp was lifted, and Long Lan's assistant, Qiao Long, walked in quickly. He said in a panic, "Sorry to disturb the general's meeting, but the Black Star ship has returned." What? The deputy commanders and generals present were all shocked. The command ship of the defeated Black Star team had returned? Long Lan was moved. How many ships? Only the Black Star ship. The three deputy commanders had different expressions. The white-haired deputy commander said, "General, the Black Star ship should have been destroyed. How could it escape from such a huge encirclement? I think it's a trick of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. There must be a powerful self-destruct weapon in the Black Star ship. General, please give the order to destroy it in the void." "Yes, Great Marshal, Deputy Commander Zhao is right. Please give the order, General." Looking at the anxious expressions of the three deputy commanders, Long Lan was almost certain in her heart. They could not escape responsibility for Yi Mingxuan's defeat this time. The Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce spent 3 years to send the Black Star ship back just to detonate it in front of us? Everyone, do you think that the people of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce are all idiots? None of them are smart? Long Lan said calmly. Only then did the anxious expressions on the three deputy commanders' faces disappear. "Allow the Black Star ship to land." Long Lan waved her sleeves and led everyone out. The Black Star ship slowly landed in the military camp, and the first to walk down was indeed Yi Mingxian. Long Lan was overjoyed and could not help but laugh. "Deputy Commander Yi, welcome back." On the other hand, the three deputy commanders went up to greet her with stiff expressions. They could not believe it. How did Yi Mingxian manage to escape from a military force that was 10 times their own without any support? Yi Mingxian gave a military salute. "Mingxian has let you down. The Black Star battle team has been completely annihilated. I have come back to ask for your forgiveness." The three deputy commanders heaved a sigh of relief. She had returned, but she had caused the Black Star battle team to be completely annihilated. This was a huge defeat, and she would be punished by the military. She did not even need to think about returning to the position of deputy commander. "We will talk about this later. First, tell us how you escaped." Long Lan was also shocked. How could she have come back alone with just a Black Star ship? Yi Mingxian said, "Before we talk about this, let me introduce you to a strange person. It was because of him that I was able to escape. Su Yu, come out." Everyone looked over and saw a silver-haired young man in embroidered clothes and a crown walking out of the Black Star ship with his hands behind his back. His clothes, hairstyle, and behavior were extremely strange. Who is this person? He is so strange. He doesn't look like someone from our civilization. I have never seen such strange clothes before. Only Long Lan's pupils shrank slightly, but she quickly concealed it and regained her composure. She said, "Is this the expert who saved you?" Yi Mingxian nodded. "Yes." Deputy Commander Zhao's eyes were filled with doubt. "Deputy Commander Yi, it is not that I am doubting him, but do you mean that he alone could save you? I suspect that Deputy Commander Yi has already surrendered to the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, how could you make up such a lie?" Just as he finished speaking, Su Yu, who was 50 meters away, suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was 3 feet away. A ghost. Even Deputy Commander Zhao, who was usually calm and composed, screamed in fear. He subconsciously took out a defensive mecha. Su Yu opened his mouth slightly and spat out a puff of true dragon divine fire, instantly burning the mecha into ashes. Assassin! Guards! Deputy Commander Zhao's heart was filled with extreme fear. Teleportation, opening his mouth to spit fire, and even the defensive mecha melted. Was the person in front of him a living creature or some kind of extremely advanced humanoid mecha? Su Yu smiled faintly and returned to his original spot without making any movements. It had only been a few breaths, and his remnant shadow was still in its original spot, like a ghost. The horrifying scene frightened everyone, and their faces changed drastically. Rumble! A group of soldiers in heavy mecha rushed over quickly with strange weapons in their hands, surrounding Suyu in the center. Suyu said calmly, "I advise you to put away your weapons. Perhaps you are very advanced in the field of mecha, but in the face of the martial path, it is not worth mentioning." Chapter 2017. Of course, if he wanted to leave, no mecha could stop him. Deputy Commander Zhao was shocked and said, "Fire! Stop it!" Long Lan stared at Deputy Commander Zhao coldly. "This mutant really has evil intentions. You were already dead just now. Do you think you have the right to give orders?" Judging from the fact that the flames just now only burned the mecha and did not hurt him at all, it was clear that this person had no evil intentions. The mecha soldiers retreated and stood behind the chief commander. "Thank you for saving our deputy commander Yi." Long Lan extended her hand and said. Suyu was slightly stunned. Only then did he realize that she wanted to shake his hand. He had almost forgotten this etiquette from the old Earth, but he still stepped forward and shook her hand skillfully. Deputy Commander Zhao was unwilling to give up. He stared at Yi Mingxian again. "It is good that you are back, but I hope you can be responsible for the soldiers who died." Yi Mingxian said, "Don't worry, I will give them an explanation," she said coldly, as if she had a deeper meaning. "But before that, I want to introduce you to someone." Yi Mingxian clapped her hands. "Come out." Heavy footsteps could be heard coming from inside the Black Star ship. "Can I not come out?" Zhang Xian's face was red, and she said embarrassedly. Her legs felt like they were filled with lead, and she could not move. Yi Mingxian said calmly, "You can, unless you don't want to be ransomed." Only then did Zhang Xian slowly come out. As soon as she appeared, Long Lan was shocked. The deputy commander of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce's Eastern War Zone, Zhang Xian? The three deputy commanders were equally shocked. Yi Mingxuan's escape was already a blessing, but how did she capture the enemy's deputy commander alive? If she remembered correctly, Zhang Xian was the overall commander of this battle. This is what happened. Yi Mingxian briefly described the process of her capture, Su Yu's appearance, his plan to capture Zhang Xian alive, and his successful escape. After listening to her, everyone looked incredulous. It sounded like a fairy tale, but the fact that they were alive in front of them was the best proof. Long Lan pondered for a moment and said, "Deputy Commander Yi was at fault for the defeat, but capturing the enemy's commander alive was a special merit. Your merits and demerits offset, so you will be reinstated." Without giving the three vice-commanders a chance to object, he raised his voice and said, "Pass down my order to the three armies. Vice-Commander Yi will take back control of the Black Star battle team." "Yes." Assistant Qiao Long immediately sent a message to the entire army through some advanced mecha. Yi Ming said, "Thank you, Commander. Ming Xian will definitely revive the Black Star team." Long Lan smiled and nodded. "Let's hold a banquet tonight to welcome Deputy Commander Yi back. Mr. Su, you have made great contributions. This time, you will be a distinguished guest, please don't decline." Of course, Su Yu would not decline, as he just happened to have something to ask. After 3 rounds of wine, Su Yu asked Long Lan, "Great Commander, you are very knowledgeable. I wonder if you have ever heard of a civilization like mine that specializes in martial arts?" Long Lan put down her wine cup. After a moment of silence, she said, "When I first met you, I wanted to ask if you're from the ancient martial civilization." Su Yu was delighted. Sure enough, he had met someone who knew him. "May I ask what kind of ancient civilization you mentioned?" Su Yu asked. Long Lan took a sip of wine and reminisced. "To be honest, when I was still a soldier, I was swept away by a spatial storm." "What? Did such a thing happen?" A spatial storm. It's unbelievable that great commander is still alive." Yi Mingxian's beautiful eyes were filled with shock. Great Commander, you were able to survive such a devastating natural disaster like the spatial storm. You're really powerful. Long Lon laughed self-deprecatingly. In front of the spatial storm, I was just like an ant. How could I be qualified to contend against it? It was a person who could fly into the sky and burrow into the ground who pulled me out of the spatial storm. That's how I survived. Hearing this, Yi Mingxian could not help but look at Suyu. Wasn't flying into the sky and burrow into the ground referring to Suyu? That person brought me to a small civilization. It was really small, probably not much bigger than our city, Long Lon said slowly. In that civilization, there were only small wooden buildings, large areas of undeveloped primeval forests, and many ferocious beasts. At first, I thought it was a primitive civilization, until I discovered that everyone in the civilization could fly into the sky and burrow into the ground. They could also use extremely powerful attacks. Only then did I realize that the civilization wasn't as simple as it seemed. I stayed in that civilization for 2 years and studied the local people for a long time. Finally, I confirmed that they were probably an ancient civilization that specialized in martial arts. Their civilization was very, very long, at least trillions of years old, or even much longer. As for our civilization, its oldest origin is only 300 million years old. Therefore, I called their civilization the ancient martial civilization, while our civilization is the warrior armor civilization. Yi Mingxian's heart was filled with yearning. Imagining the human beings who could fly into the sky and burrow into the ground, she could not help but ask, then, is our warrior armor civilization more powerful, or the ancient martial civilization? Long Lon was very sure about this. Of course it's the ancient martial civilization. Their lifespans are long, almost as long as the heavens and the earth. They can kill people from 1,000 miles away, wipe out a civilization with a single slap, and achieve immortal and indestructible bodies. On the other hand, our Jia warrior civilization relies too much on mechas, but our bodies are relatively weak. At most, we can only live for 800 years with the help of advanced medicine. Everyone at the table was envious. Yi Mingxian felt even more complicated. At first, she thought that Su Yu's civilization was quite backward, but now she realized that the ancient martial civilization was the truly advanced civilization. Although the Mecha civilization was prosperous, in a sense, it was a civilization that had gone the wrong way. If the ancient martial civilization and the warrior armor civilization of the same level were to fight, I think the warrior armor civilization would not last a day, and would be destroyed. Long Lon sighed deeply. Su Yu agreed with this point. A dozen divine warriors of heaven and earth could probably destroy this 5-star civilization in a day. However, Su Yu was concerned about one thing. Then how did you come back? Long Lon shook her head and said, I don't know. One day, when I woke up in the morning, I found myself in the Thunder Fairy Zodiac Palace. I always thought it was an unrealistic dream, but now that I've seen you, I can confirm that it wasn't a dream, but something that really happened, Long Lon said, staring at Su Yu. Su Yu's eyes lit up. If he wasn't mistaken, it should be the Thunder Fairy Zodiac Palace that found a way to bring Long Lon back from the ancient martial civilization. Then, they should have the ability to send Su Yu back. Finally, he had found a clue to go home. After the banquet, Su Yu asked, Can I borrow the local books and materials? Long Lon said, Of course. Our army has all the books and materials of the 4 universal civilizations. It will take at least 100 years to finish reading them. That might not be the case. After the banquet, Yi Mingxian accompanied Su Yu for a walk. She let out a sigh of relief and said, Thank you. Su Yu shook his head. You don't have to thank me. Just help me contact a passenger ship and let me go to the Thunder Fairy Zodiac Palace. Yi Mingxian paused for a moment, then caught up with him again. Why don't you stay? With your strength in the martial path, you will be highly valued in the Jiao warrior civilization. By then, you can have anything you want. It will be better than you going back. Su Yu said, "This is one of the differences between our ancient martial path civilization and your Jiao warrior civilization. The living creatures in our civilization focus on the training of the martial path. Life enjoyment is just an auxiliary, dispensable thing." Yiming Xian sighed softly. She knew she couldn't persuade Su Yu to stay, so she said, "I will prepare a passenger ship for you." Su Yu nodded. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Do you need my help? Those 3 deputy commanders are the culprits who framed you." He had confirmed this by listening to their telepathic thoughts. Yiming Xian shook her head and smiled. "Don't think of me as useless. I have ways to deal with those 3 deputy commanders." Su Yu recognized her intelligence, so he didn't doubt her. He said, "If you have any difficulties, come to me." "Where?" Yiming Xian had a faint smile on her face. "You don't have a place to stay, do you?" Su Yu was startled. He said, "We martial cultivators have the 4 seas as our home. It's normal for us to eat and sleep in the open. We don't insist on a place to stay. Of course, if you can arrange a room for me, that will be even better." "Then stay at my house," Yiming Xian said. "Your house?" Su Yu was surprised. "Aren't the people of your civilization very conservative?" Yiming Xian was slightly embarrassed. "I'm kind enough to let you stay. Do you have to be so straightforward?" Fine, if she didn't mind, why would a man like Su Yu care? "Then I'll have to trouble you for a few days." Su Yu took a cell phone-like device from the military camp. It contained a huge amount of information, all of which was related to the 4 universal civilizations. As the deputy commander, Yiming Xian was assigned a luxurious private villa in the center of the city. Su Yu chose a room, closed the door and said, "Don't disturb me if there's nothing urgent." "Oh right, we martial cultivators don't eat or drink, so there's no need to call me for meals." Yiming Xian couldn't help but be annoyed. "You're really impolite." Thinking of his attitude when they first met, Yiming Xian was annoyed and envious at the same time. The ancient martial civilization is so nice. Entering the room, Su Yu immediately began to flip through the huge amount of information. With his amazing reading ability, coupled with the time acceleration, Su Yu spent less than 2 months to finish reading all the information that Long Lan thought would take her 100 years to finish. When he was done, he let out a long breath. So that's how it is. The Jiao warrior civilization was actually quite limited. As far as he knew, apart from the 4 universal civilizations centered around the 4 zodiac palaces, no other civilizations had been discovered. The people of the Jiao warrior civilization had tried to explore more distant areas of nothingness, but they discovered that there was a powerful space storm at the edge of the civilizations, which surrounded the 4 universal civilizations and isolated them from the outside world. Therefore, the Jiao warrior civilization was actually a small, isolated civilization. In the great beginning realm, it was like an inconspicuous speck of dust, staying in a corner. The real mainstream civilization was still the ancient martial civilization that Su Yu was in. Understanding this, Su Yu heaved a long sigh of relief. He used to think that the civilization he was in was the isolated, backward civilization. Now it seemed that to be precise, the civilization that had gone in the wrong direction was the Jiao warrior civilization. However, why did the Jiao warrior civilization develop in the direction of mechas? Chapter 2018. Regarding the origin of the Jiao warrior civilization, all of the information was ambiguous, making it impossible for anyone to grasp it. It was like whether the chicken came before the egg or the egg came before the chicken. However, there was a reason for everything. The appearance of the mechas was definitely not a coincidence. There must be an invisible hand controlling it. The biggest suspect should be the Zodiac Palace, the highest ruler of the civilization system. Knock, knock. While Su Yu was thinking, Yiming Xian knocked on his door for the first time in 2 months. "What's the matter?" I've booked a ticket for you on the Epic. It will depart in about a year and a month. The whole journey will take 5 years. Suyu did not frown. 5 years was quite a short time. However, he did not complain. The journey back from the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce was limited to the Zodiac Palace of the Rain Fairy, and it had taken 3 years. Now that he was going to cross the civilization system, 5 years could be considered a short time. When he opened the door, Yi Mingxian was standing outside. She was wearing a simple white dress, and her soft long hair was draped over her back. Her delicate skin was slightly flushed. Suyu felt like he had returned to the past and met a modern beauty. Thank you. Suyu took the ticket from her hand. You've been reading for 2 months. Don't you want to rest? Yi Mingxian said. Even martial artists pay attention to the balance of work and rest, right? It's not too late to read later. He had not finished reading at all. There was no need to continue reading. Moreover, the actual reading experience was not 2 months, but 100 years. She had underestimated the physical qualities of martial artists. Then relax for a while. Can you let me study your warship? Suyu asked. After 100 years of reading, he was quite interested in the warships of the Jia warrior civilization. The power of the warships might not be satisfactory, but the ability and speed to travel through the void was something the ancient martial civilization did not possess. If he could bring back a few warships, traveling through the void would undoubtedly be much faster. Yi Mingxian smiled. Just in time, the commander has something to talk to you about. Him. Suyu nodded slightly, vaguely understanding the commander's intention. Just in time, there is something that I can't find in the information. I also want to ask the commander. In the military camp, the commander Long Lan and her assistant were discussing some military secret. Only the 2 of them were present. The other 3 important deputy commanders were nowhere to be seen. Mr. Su is here, please sit down. Long Lan said politely. Suyu said, Commander, did you summon me here for something? Yi Mingxian sat down beside him. No one knew when she had put on her military uniform, but she looked very solemn. I invited Mr. Su here to discuss a major military event with you. Suyu was surprised. It was a secret military meeting, but only Yi Mingxian was present. The other 3 deputy commanders did not come? He glanced at Yi Mingxian, and the latter smiled faintly with a profound meaning. Suyu was slightly surprised. He had already gotten rid of 3 deputy commanders? It had only been 2 months. This woman's methods were indeed not bad. I am indebted to the great commander for trusting me. If you feel that there is a need to let me know, feel free to tell me. This is what happened. We learned a very important piece of information from Zhan Xian. The ancient ruins excavated by the Star Alliance Commerce Chamber of Commerce are most likely the ruins of your ancient martial arts civilization. Suyu was slightly moved. How could there be relics of the ancient martial civilization in the Jia Wu civilization? The ruins are very dangerous. The power of the Jia Wu civilization cannot open them at all. They are all blocked outside. I hope that Mr. Su can help us open the ruins. Suyu shook his head lightly. I am running out of time. I am sorry. There was only a year left before the Epic set sail. It would take at least 3 years to reach the ruins. That is a pity. I think that the ruins were designed for the ancient martial civilization. You are probably the only one who can enter it. Suyu had reservations about this. The commander did not understand the hierarchy of the Jia Wu civilization. Perhaps he had overestimated Suyu. According to Zhan Xian, even the pathmasters who entered the ruins would not be able to return. Unless the pathmasters here were like them, with a longer lifespan than ordinary people and no martial arts. I have one more thing to ask of Mr. Su. I hope that Mr. Su can help us. Suyu said, Go ahead. Mr. Su, can you teach us some basic martial arts training methods? The commander said. When I was in the ancient martial civilization, I used to train. But for some reason, after I came back, all of my memories disappeared. My cultivation also disappeared. So, I always thought it was a dream. Is there such a thing? Suyu was confused. They might find it hard to understand the disappearance of their memories and cultivation, but how could a martial artist not know what was going on? His memories were erased, and his cultivation was destroyed. A faint light flashed in Suyu's eyes. He said calmly, I can teach you the basic martial arts method. But, even if I teach you the more profound martial arts, I am afraid you will not be able to understand it. You will need to develop it yourself. The commander and Yi Mingxian were excited. Even the most basic martial arts were the ability to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. If this spread, the impact on the Jiawu civilization would be unimaginable. Don't be so quick to thank me. In exchange for teaching you the basic martial arts, I need 100 warships that can fly in the void. How big? The Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce has tens of thousands of warships. The commander thought for a moment. 100 warships was not a small number for the Eastern Battle Zone. It was equivalent to 1/10 of a battle team. But, compared to teaching them the martial arts, it was not worth mentioning. I agree. I will gather them for you within a year. Suyu nodded and said, There is something I want to ask you, Commander. I hope you can answer me. Go ahead. Suyu's eyes shone with a profound light. I have read all the books of the 4 civilizations, but none of them mention the Nirvana and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. Not even their names appeared. Can you tell me why? The commander was surprised. The Nirvana and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce are rather secretive organizations. They are not willing to let outsiders know about them. From what I know, the ancient martial civilization also has many similar forces that manipulate the situation on the surface. Suyu's eyes were sharp. He said calmly, Then you must not know that in the ancient martial civilization, there are also 2 organizations, the Nirvana and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. What? The commander and Yi Mingxian were both shocked. 2 organizations that spanned across 2 different civilizations? How is that possible? The commander said. So, I want to hear what you know about the Nirvana and see if it is consistent with what I said, Suyu said. The commander's face was solemn as he said slowly, Our army is a direct force of the Nirvana. A high-level Nirvana is in charge of the 4 battlefields of the Yellow Palace of the Rain Deity. As far as I know, he believes in some kind of eagle totem and is very devout. However, that is only his own belief. Other than that, I do not know anything else. Suyu's eyes shone. Nirvana, yes, but it did not seem like the style of the Nirvana. The real Nirvana would preach crazily at all costs, such as the leader of the moon-worshipping cult. The high-level Nirvana controlled a huge army. Why did they not turn the army into believers? Was it because they could not? It was not like the moon-worshipping cult was forcibly established when the Dark Moon civilization was in such a difficult situation. How could it be possible that everything was ready now? Could it be that they did not dare? What was there that the Nirvana feared so much that they did not even dare to preach? Then, is the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce good at business and controlling most of the economic lifelines of the 4 civilizations? The commander shook his head slightly. As far as I know, the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce is a chamber of commerce in name, but in fact, it is not good at doing business. Mr. Su, why do you ask? As expected, even the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce was extremely restrained. With the greed of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce, even a 2-star civilization full of war would persevere in setting up a black market, let alone the 4 great civilizations. What was especially suspicious was that since the Nirvana and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce had not extended their reach, where did the wealth they each supported such a huge army come from? There was only one answer, which was to obtain it from other places. In other words, the Nirvana and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce maintained continuous contact with the outside world. However, they were hiding and did not reveal their existence. It was as if they were afraid of the same thing or person. Su Yu suddenly felt that he was surrounded by a dense crowd of eyes, watching him invisibly. This made him think that agreeing to teach the basics of martial arts might have been a little hasty. Since the Nirvana and the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce had contact with the outside world, why did they not inherit any martial arts? Perhaps they had noticed some taboo. Mr. Su, did you find anything wrong? Long Lon asked nervously. Su Yu's lips squirmed. He wanted to tell them the truth, but after looking at him and then at Yi Mingxian, he silently withdrew his words and said calmly, "It's nothing. Maybe it's someone with the same name." Rather than making them anxious, it was better to be ignorant. Then the teaching of martial arts. Long Lon said expectantly. Su Yu said calmly, "It will be held as scheduled." After the conversation, Yi Mingxian accompanied Su Yu home. Along the way, she asked about the various ancient martial civilizations. She was amazed and fascinated by them. The surprise and expectation on her face did not diminish for a moment. When they returned to the front of the villa, a luxurious mecha car was parked in front of it. A fashionable young man dressed in expensive clothes was waiting in front of the villa with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Behind him were all strong and well-built bodyguards in uniform. Seeing that Yi Mingxian had returned, the young man stepped forward and smiled warmly. "Mingxian, welcome back safely." Yi Mingxian frowned slightly. "Without looking at the flowers," she said calmly, "I appreciate your kindness. Is there anything else? For the past 3 years, I have been worried about you. When I heard that you were back, I immediately rushed over from the west side. Mingxian, don't you understand my feelings for you?" the young man said softly. Yi Mingxian showed a look of disgust. "Enough. If you continue to pester me, I will immediately punish you for disturbing the military affairs of the Eastern War Zone. Get lost." Yi Mingxian hated him very much. The young man's expression remained the same. He said stubbornly, "Mingxian, I have sacrificed for you for so many years. Have you never been touched?" Yi Mingxian snorted and shook her head. "Ridiculous. Get out of the way." She parted the crowd and opened the door of the villa. She turned her head and said, "Mr. Su, come in." Chapter 2019. Stop right there. The 2 bodyguards behind the youth blocked the way. The youth put down the bouquet and looked Su Yu up and down, revealing a smile. "My name is Chun Tianqing, from the Rain Fairy Civilization, the son of the Western War Commander. Are you Mingxuan's new bodyguard?" "Bodyguard?" Su Yu looked at his relatively strange attire, thought for a moment, then said, "Sort of. Do you have any advice for me?" Chun Tianqing said, "As a bodyguard, you should first examine your own position and identity. Don't do anything beyond your capabilities, understand? For example? For example, you shouldn't have entered Mingxuan's villa. Moreover, you stayed there for 2 months. Chen Tianqing's face flickered with anger. It turned out that Yi Mingxuan's villa was constantly being watched by Chen Tianqing's people. 2 months ago, Su Yu had entered Yi Mingxuan's villa and hadn't come out since. Chen Tianqing knew about this. "Oh," Su Yu said indifferently. The grim expression on Chen Tianqing's face grew darker and darker as he shouted coldly, "So, if you still want to live, then scram right now, immediately. Chen Tianqing." Yi Mingxian pulled out a sword-shaped laser gun and aimed it at Chen Tianqing's head. "If you say one more word, I'll send you on your way. You should know me. I mean what I say." Hearing this, Chen Tianqing's gloomy face stiffened slightly. Yi Mingxian had always been a man of her word. If she said this, she would really blow his head off. Chen Tianqing's body stiffened, not daring to move. "Mr. Su, please come over," Yi Mingxian said. Su Yu glanced at Chen Tianqing, then passed through the crowd expressionlessly and entered the villa. Only then did Yi Mingxian put away her laser gun, coldly saying, "I don't want to see you ever again. Remember my words." Chen Tianqing's expression was grave. "Yi Mingxian, tell me the truth. What is your relationship with this person?" Yi Mingxian paused for a moment, not saying a word. She grabbed Su Yu's arm, tiptoed, and pressed her red lips against Su Yu's cheek. Do you still want to ask? This scene caused Chen Tianqing's face to turn ashen. He had long felt that their relationship was unusual. With Yi Mingxuan's conservative nature, there was no way she would let an ordinary man enter her villa and stay there for 2 months. This kind of cohabitation was enough to explain the problem. Yi Mingxuan's actions crushed the last shred of hope in Chen Tianqing's heart. It was said that this man was brought back by Yi Mingxian. It was very likely that he had captured Yi Mingxuan's heart, and the two of them had already developed a cohabitation relationship. Thinking about how the goddess he had painstakingly pursued for several years was occupied by a stranger, he felt an indescribable anger in his heart. He stared at Su Yu viciously, but didn't say anything. Instead, he jumped into the luxurious mecha car and left. The bodyguards behind him took out their runes and summoned their mechas to chase after them. After they walked far away, Yi Mingxian held on to Su Yu's arm, and it was only when they entered the house that she let go of him. She then said, "I'm sorry. Thank you." "What are you apologizing for? What are you thanking me for?" "I'm sorry that I used you as a shield to get rid of him. I'm thankful that you gave me face by not killing him." Yi Mingxian aimed the gun at Chen Tianqing, not to save Su Yu, but to save him. With Su Yu's abilities, he could probably kill Chen Tianqing 100 times over with just a glance. Su Yu calmly said, "You don't have to thank me. But don't let me get involved in the conflict between you two. It won't happen again." Yi Mingxuan's heart skipped a beat. She could sense Su Yu's displeasure. Her kiss had not made this strong martial artist from the ancient martial civilization feel a shred of joy. Instead, he was very unhappy. "I'm sorry. I promise there won't be a next time." Yi Mingxian was actually a little disappointed. She had once thought that she wouldn't be emotionally affected by any man. That was because there was no man in this world who was worthy of her respect. But just now, Su Yu's words made her feel indescribably complicated. There was an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. In his eyes, she was indeed nothing, just like when they had first met. But we are not in a relationship. If it were any other man, Yi Mingxian wouldn't have bothered to explain. But in front of Su Yu, she didn't want Su Yu to misunderstand. She said, "He is the son of the highest commander of the Western Battle Zone. He has an extraordinary status, and has pursued me for a long time. But I have never agreed to him. Please believe me on this." Su Yu calmly said, "Oh." He was curious as to why Yi Mingxian would explain to him. He didn't care at all whether she had agreed or not. Looking at Su Yu's cold reaction, Yi Mingxian felt even more disappointed. She said, "The reason why I don't want him to die in your hands is not because of our relationship. It is because of his identity. He can't die in the Eastern Battle Zone. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome." The 4 great battle zones of the Yellow Path Palace of the Rain Deity are not harmonious with each other, especially the Eastern and Western battle zones. They are competitors. Whoever has the upper hand in the war against the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce will receive more resources and support from the Supreme Ruler of the Nirvana Realm. All these years, the Western Battle Zone has always had the upper hand. It has proposed many times to merge the Eastern and Western battle zones to form a comprehensive battle zone. At first, the Supreme Ruler was opposed to it. But recently, he has been considering it carefully and seems to be on the verge of agreeing. With the Western Battle Zone's leading performance, there is no doubt that the Supreme Commander of the Comprehensive Battle Zone will be the current Supreme Commander of the Western Battle Zone. Long Lan will undoubtedly be excluded. Now, if the son of the Western Battle Zone's Supreme Commander dies in our Eastern Battle Zone, I think the Supreme Ruler of the Nirvana Realm will have more reason to appoint him as the Supreme Commander. After listening to the cause and effect, Su Yu was expressionless. There was competition everywhere, and no place was an exception. "Don't worry," If he doesn't provoke me again, I won't bother him, Suyu said. Would an elephant carefully search for an ant in the grass? Obviously not. Yi Mingxian heaved a sigh of relief. Even if Chen Tianqing wanted to cause trouble for Suyu, he probably didn't have the ability to do so. He might be able to summon the wind and summon the rain in the western battle zone, but in the eastern battle zone, there was no power that he could rely on. It was a pity that she had underestimated Chen Tianqing's determination. 3 days later, when Yi Mingxian was actively preparing for the teaching of the martial path, a sudden piece of news disrupted her rhythm. Deputy Commander Yi, the Supreme Commander has asked for you. It's an urgent matter. It was Long Lan's assistant, Qiao Long. Yi Mingxian looked at Su Yu's tightly shut door and said, "Okay, I'll set off immediately." In the military camp, Long Lan's face was gloomy and gloomy. "Supreme Commander, what's the matter?" Yi Mingxian asked. Long Lan didn't say a word. She just handed him the latest dispatch from the Eastern Battle Zone. The dispatch was a widely disseminated platform. It was similar to the newspapers on Earth. Any news could be made known to the public immediately. Yi Mingxuan's expression changed as she glanced at it. Chen Tianqing was assassinated in the Eastern Battle Zone's bar, and one of his arms was blown off? She was deeply surprised and exclaimed, "How could such a thing happen? The bodyguards around him are all the best in the Western Battle Zone. It's impossible for anyone to kill Chen Tianqing." Continue reading. As she read, Yi Mingxuan's expression changed again. She said angrily, "Shameless." The dispatch said that, according to the description of Chen Tianqing and his bodyguards, the assassin was a silver-haired youth. It even projected his image. It was Suyu. Others might not know, but Yi Mingxian did. For the past 3 days, Suyu had been in her villa and hadn't left at all. How could he have gone to assassinate Chen Tianqing? Moreover, if Suyu wanted to kill Chen Tianqing, did he need to assassinate him? Moreover, the assassination had failed? If Suyu really wanted to kill him, none of the 10,000 Chen Tianqings could escape. "Supreme Commander, this is slander." "I can testify," Yi Mingxian said. Long Lan said, "If you can testify, can you change the direction of the Western Battle Zone's Supreme Commander's plane?" Yi Mingxuan's eyes flickered. She said seriously, "The Western Battle Zone's Supreme Commander is coming to the Eastern Battle Zone? To seek justice for his son?" "Yes, in name. But in reality we all know why," Long Lan said in a low voice. Yi Mingxian naturally understood. It was to create momentum. To make the Eastern Battle Zone's Supreme Commander lower his head in front of him, and to create momentum for him to ascend to the throne of the Integrated Battle Zone's Supreme Commander in the future. The other party had published this news on the dispatch to attract everyone's attention. Damn it! That despicable Chen Tianqing. I dare to bet that even though his arm was cut off, he must have a way to recover it, Yi Mingxian said. Long Lan's eyes were filled with anxiety. She pretended to be calm and said, "Now, who is in the right and who is in the wrong is not important. What's important is how to suppress the momentum." She paused, then said quietly, "In your opinion, how about inviting Mr. Su to appear?" "No." Yi Mingxian rejected on the spot. She said calmly, "Based on my understanding of him, he can't be considered cold, but he is definitely not kind. If he knew that Chen Tianqing slandered him like this, I think Chen Tianqing might really die in our Eastern Battle Zone." Long Lan immediately became alert and realized the seriousness of the matter. If Chen Tianqing really died in the Eastern Battle Zone, the situation would be even worse than it was now. "Supreme Commander, an urgent message from the Western Battle Zone's Supreme Commander." Qiao Long handed over an important piece of information. Long Lan took it and looked at it. Her already gloomy face became even gloomier. So fast. The urgent message said that the Western Battle Zone's Supreme Commander would arrive in the Eastern Battle Zone in 5 days. Yi Mingxian said coldly, "It's obvious that he's prepared." The Western Battle Zone's military camp is at least a month's journey from here. Unless the Supreme Commander goes to the border 3 days in advance, he can only arrive in 5 days. The father and son have a good plan. They want to get both the man and the money. Long Lan looked at Yi Mingxian calmly. On the one hand, it was to force Long Lan to lower his head and punish the murderer. On the other hand, it was to force Yi Mingxian to agree to Chen Tianqing's proposal. Dream on. Yi Mingxian spat out coldly. However, she had no idea what to do at the moment. If the Western Battle Zone's Supreme Commander came, she would not only have to face the Supreme Commander alone, but also the public. If she didn't handle it carefully, the Eastern Battle Zone's reputation would be tarnished. You should go back first. Tomorrow, gather all the generals in the army and discuss this matter urgently, Long Lan said. Yi Mingxian nodded and returned to the villa with a heavy heart. She looked at Su Yu's tightly shut door and hesitated to knock on it. No matter what, she couldn't let him know about what had happened today. Chapter 2020. The next day, Yi Mingxian quietly left the villa and headed to the military camp. Other than Yi Mingxian, there were 3 new faces. They were all generals under Yi Mingxuan's command. They replaced the 3 former deputy commanders. Many of the generals present were also replaced. More than half of them were elite soldiers under Yi Mingxuan's command. It could be said that all the higher-ups in the military camp had become Yi Mingxuan's people. Without a doubt, she had taken many actions in the past 2 months. She had sent 3 of her former colleagues to prison and replaced many of her trusted subordinates. The commander-in-chief, Long Lan, had tacitly approved of this. The 3 deputy commanders had caused an entire battle team to fall into an ambush. This had seriously violated his bottom line. It was fine to fight for power, but to use such unscrupulous methods was unacceptable. I believe you all know what happened? Long Lan asked. The 3 new deputy commanders had heavy hearts. How could they not know what had happened? They had just taken office and encountered such a thing. They didn't know if they should be happy or sad. What suggestions do you have? Let's brainstorm, Long Lan said. The 3 new deputy commanders offered their suggestions. They considered military affairs, connections, and all sorts of foreign aid. They gave valuable suggestions. However, Long Lan's expression remained unchanged and she remained silent. Long Lan had considered all the suggestions last night. However, in the end, none of them were suitable. The enemy had come with great momentum. Normal strategies couldn't stop them. In the end, he looked at Yi Mingxian, who hadn't said a word. Do you have any ideas? Long Lan wanted to hear Yi Mingxuan's plan the most. As the goddess of war of the Eastern War Zone, she had one night to think. She might be able to come up with a plan that others couldn't. Yi Mingxian looked around. I have a plan, but I don't know if the commander-in-chief dares to carry it out. Hearing the murderous intent in her words, Long Lan glanced at Xiao Long. The latter understood and activated absolute defense. A visible layer of light enveloped the entire tent. Not only could the information outside not be transmitted out, but the information inside could also not be transmitted to the outside. Speak. Yi Mingxian said calmly. Extraordinary measures must be taken. Instead of waiting for death and being slowly nibbled to death by the boiling frog in warm water, why don't you take drastic measures? Hearing this, everyone gasped in shock. Were they preparing to assassinate the commander-in-chief of the Western War Zone? Long Lan's pupils constricted and her heart shuddered. No wonder she was the goddess of battles. Only she could come up with such a strategy. He didn't reject it immediately. Instead, he fell into deep thought. In fact, he had thought of this plan before. The chances of the commander-in-chief of the Western Theater of Operations becoming the commander-in-chief of the Comprehensive Theater of Operations were much higher than his. At that time, would he still be able to tolerate Long Lan, the commander-in-chief of the Eastern War Zone, who used to be on equal footing with him? The answer was no. When he was in power, he would definitely try his best to suppress him and his trusted subordinates, and finally push them out of the core of the comprehensive war zone. This was the best outcome. If he was vicious enough, at the very least, Long Lan would die, and it would be difficult for Yi Mingxian to survive. All the influential generals would be purged with blood. With the personality of the ruler of Nirvana, he might not care about their lives at all. The future was predictable, so why not take the opportunity to get rid of the commander-in-chief of the Western Theater of Operations? Does anyone have any objections? The expressions of the generals changed drastically. If they failed, it would lead to a war between the Eastern and Western battlefield. If the ruler of Nirvana found out, they would all be executed. Seeing that many of them were still hoping for luck, Yi Mingxian said in a low voice, "Do you think that there will be a place for you when the commander-in-chief of the Western Theater of Operations is in power in the future? He is already kind enough to leave the military. However, I think you all know what kind of person the commander-in-chief of the 4 battlefields is." Hearing this, everyone's heart pounded again. His personality could only be described as cruel. He was extremely cruel to his enemies. In the past, he successfully captured 80 million soldiers from the GL Chamber of Commerce. But what was their fate? No matter how the GL Chamber of Commerce tried to negotiate, the commander-in-chief of the Western Theater of Operations dragged them to a small abandoned civilization without hesitation. Then, he detonated the civilization and blew everyone into pieces. His cruel nature was completely exposed. In the future, when everyone here became his enemy, one could imagine what would happen to them. I pledge my life to follow the commander-in-chief. Finally, they made up their minds. Soon, all the generals present expressed their opinions. Under Long Lan's leadership, they signed the contract. If anyone leaked the secret, the contract would automatically destroy them. Deputy Commander-in-Chief Yi, tell us your specific arrangements, Yi Mingxian said. Yi Mingxuan's eyes lit up. We will go all out and annihilate the other party. However, I guess that the other party might have predicted that we might assassinate him, so he will definitely be on guard. There are 3 ways that he will be on guard. The first is to have a large number of troops follow him and protect him along the way. The second is that he might change his route midway, making it impossible for us to track his whereabouts. However, in order to conceal his movements, he will definitely bring very few troops with him. To deal with these 2 possibilities, I have set up 2 plans. First, I will lead the Black Star team to ambush him along his original route and annihilate him. Second, the 3 deputy commander-in-chief will spread out their troops and ambush him along the route that he might appear. After listening to her analysis, everyone had a general idea. They could not help but secretly praise Yi Mingxuan's wisdom and her godlike strategy. Long Lan said, "Immediately set up the plan and kill the other party." Yes. The Eastern Theater of Operations was forced to fight with their backs to the wall. 3 days later, the Black Star team led by Yi Mingxian indeed found the Western Theater of Operations Commander-in-Chief's army along the route that they had to pass. The number of troops on the other side was about an entire team. Yi Mingxian was puzzled. They had really gone along the original route. Was the Western Theater of Operations Commander-in-Chief really not worried that the Eastern Theater of Operations would take a risk? However, no matter what, they had to be annihilated before they reached the military camp of the Eastern Theater of Operations. If they were killed now, they could frame the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. If they were killed then, they would be openly looking down on the ruler of Nirvana. Seeing that most of the other party had entered her attack range, Yi Mingxian secretly contacted the strong fighters hidden in the various civilizations. She said in a low voice, "Everyone, get ready." However, at this moment, an indifferent voice entered his ears without any warning. "If I were you, I would consider the 3rd possibility. This is a conspiracy against the entire Eastern Theater of Operations from the very beginning." Yi Mingxuan's body suddenly stiffened. She was almost frightened. "Mr. Su." She looked around in shock, but did not see Su Yu. "Where are you?" "On your shoulder." "What?" Yi Mingxian looked at her shoulders in shock. However, there was clearly nothing there. Just as she was in shock, a speck of dust appeared on her right shoulder. It continued to expand until it finally became a real person. Even though Yi Mingxian had mentally prepared herself for Su Yu's methods, she was still shocked. When were you on my shoulder? Su Yu calmly said. It was probably before you left the villa when you were changing clothes. You looked at my body again? Yi Mingxuan's face turned red as she cried out in shock. She glared at Su Yu in shame and anger. This fellow. That. Deputy Commander Yi, the communication device is still on. Suddenly, the voice of her female assistant sounded from the communication device in her hand. She was in another civilization and had used the communication device to remind her. Hearing this, Yi Mingxuan's heart thumped. She looked down at the communication device that was still on, her face flushed red. Did that mean that the generals under her had heard their conversation just now? Cough cough, Deputy Commander Yi, we didn't hear anything. Speaking of which, it's not wrong for Deputy Commander Yi to find a man. The mutterings from the communication device made Yi Mingxian want to find a hole in the ground to hide in and never come out again. She had actually embarrassed herself in front of the entire army. Only when the alarm sounded beside her did Yi Mingxian come back to her senses. She immediately regained her composure and said, "The Western Battle Commander's team is about to arrive." "Everyone, get ready," Su Yu calmly said. "Didn't I ask you to use your brain again? This is a conspiracy. Immediately order your army to cease all activities. Do not mobilize your troop." "You? What right do you have to order me around?" Yi Mingxuan's face turned slightly red in front of the entire army. She did not want others to think that she was being controlled by a man. Su Yu nonchalantly said, "Then you can start the war." Yi Mingxian struggled in her heart. This was her only chance to eliminate the Western Battle Commander. If she missed it, she would not have another chance. In the past, Yi Mingxian would have attacked without hesitation. But now, after struggling for a long time, she ordered, "Wait for orders for now." She then turned off the communication device. The generals hidden in various locations were speechless. Some were shocked, some sighed, and some were regretful. What the? There really is a man who can conquer Yi Mingxian. Sigh, our goddess has fallen into the hands of another man. Hee, I no longer have to dream of marrying the goddess of war. On the other side, Yi Mingxuan's face was still red. She averted her gaze and asked, "Tell me your reason." Su Yu said, "My reason is, if I were the Western Battle Commander, I would be sitting in the Western Battle Commander's camp right now. I would station my troops at the border and wait for my army to be annihilated in the Eastern Battle Commander. Then I would have a good reason to start a war between the two areas. Finally, I would alert the ruler of the Nirvana realm. I would laugh as the Eastern Battle Commander, who provoked me first, was wiped out. The Western Battle Commander would then effortlessly take over the Eastern Battle Commander." That's about it. Do you need me to explain in detail?" Yi Mingxuan's back was covered in cold sweat. She stammered, Don't say it. I'll think about it myself." This guess was too bold. But it was precisely because of this boldness that there was a possibility of success. Others might not have the guts to sacrifice an entire team, but what kind of person was the Western Battle Commander? Would he care about the lives of his soldiers? Chapter 2021. Thinking of this, Yi Mingxian shuddered. She reactivated her communication device and said solemnly, "Retreat! Take a detour." 3 days later, the army sped up and returned to the military camp. Half a day later, the army from the Western War Zone arrived as scheduled. However, just as Su Yu had predicted, the commander of the Western War Zone was not in the ship, but his assistant. Yi Mingxian was secretly shocked. That was close. The commander asked, "Where is your commander?" The assistant said, "The commander had something to do and returned to the military camp. He asked me to inform Commander Long that Chen Tianqing was assassinated and ask for an explanation." Long Lan was also secretly worried. Fortunately, Su Yu had appeared in time. Otherwise, he would have fallen into the old man's trap. He was about to reject the request when Su Yu's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Why don't you suggest that the two commanders hold an alliance meeting at the border to discuss this matter together? Long Lan glanced at Su Yu out of the corner of his eye. Thanks to Su Yu, I was saved. Does he have a new plan? After pondering for a moment, he said, You want an explanation? Sure. We'll hold an alliance meeting at the border in 10 days. The assistant did not expect this. He hurriedly left the crowd and asked for instructions from the Western War Zone's commander. In the faraway Western War Zone, at the border, in the military camp, the camp near the other 3 battle teams of the Western War Zone was packed with soldiers who were ready to go. Inside the camp, the commander of the Western War Zone, Chen Huang, had a sharp look in his eyes. The deputy commanders and generals were suffocating. I overestimated Long Lan's courage and the goddess of war. I'm really disappointed that she did not choose to take the risk. Chen Huang said calmly. The other commanders were also very regretful. They had used this incident to put great pressure on the Eastern War Zone and create the illusion that they were going to attack the city. They wanted to make the Eastern War Zone feel uneasy and make a desperate move. However, they could not attack the battle teams that had entered the Eastern War Zone, so they could not have a good reason to attack. At that moment, Chen Huang suddenly received an urgent message from his assistant. After reading it, Chen Huang was lost in thought. What is Long Lan's intention in proposing the border meeting? He could not understand how a meeting between the two sides would benefit Long Lan in any way. On the contrary, Emperor Chen would be able to overwhelm the other party with his imposing manner and gain a greater advantage in a face-to-face negotiation. I agree to the meeting, Emperor Chen said decisively after a brief moment of consideration. Eastern Battle Zone. After receiving a positive reply, Long Lan's assistant Xiao Long and the assistant of the commander-in-chief of the Western Theater of Operations finalized a detailed plan. The two sides agreed to go to the border 10 days later to negotiate. The next day, Long Lan, Yi Mingxian, and the two great battle teams headed to the Western Battle Zone with great momentum. Su Yu also traveled with them. Why did you request a meeting between the commanders of both sides? Yi Mingxian asked curiously on the way. Su Yu smiled and said, You will know when the time comes. After a boring march, they finally arrived at the border of the Eastern War Zone on the 10th day. Both sides sent their respective delegations to the civilization talks, which served as the dividing line. Emperor Chen and the delegation arrived first. They sat down calmly on the civilized plains. Long Lan and the others followed closely behind. Commander Long, it's been a while. Emperor Chen shook hands with him with a smile, as if nothing had happened between them. Long Lan was also calm. Long time no see. Your body is as good as ever. The two of them looked like they were shaking hands, but they were actually competing in secret. Please take a seat, Long Lan said. After both parties had taken their seats, Emperor Chen wiped away the smile on his face and revealed a hint of coldness. His expression changed quickly. Commander Long, my son was assassinated in your Eastern War Zone. What kind of explanation are you going to give me? Behind him was Chun Tianqing, who had lost an arm. His face was full of grief. When he glanced at Su Yu and Yi Mingxian, who was sitting next to him, anger flashed in his eyes. Long Lan said calmly, According to our investigation, although there was a disturbance in the tavern, it was not Mr. Su from the Eastern War Zone who attacked him. Apart from Chen Tianqing and his bodyguards, there is no evidence to prove that it was Mr. Su who did it. Emperor Chen snorted coldly. What a joke! As the son of the great commander of the Western War Zone, would you slander an ordinary person for no reason? Long Lan chuckled. Haha, Mr. Su is not an ordinary person. To tell you the truth, he is a powerful martial artist from the ancient martial civilization. Hearing that, Emperor Chen Tianqing, and the generals of the Western War Zone were all stunned. A martial artist from the ancient martial civilization? Is he special? Can he prove that he is innocent? Emperor Chen asked 3 questions in a row. Long Lan smiled, but did not speak again. Su Yu sat still and calmly said, "If I wanted to assassinate your son, even 10,000 of him would be reduced to ashes. How could I only lose an arm and return in failure?" Emperor Chen did not even look at him. Instead, he looked at Long Lan and said, "Commander Long, when the 2 commanders are talking, it is better for irrelevant people to not interrupt. In my opinion, it is better for Commander Chen to show some respect to Mr. Chen." Haha, is that so? Emperor Chen did not even bother to look at Su Yu. He was showing his toughness. Su Yu smiled calmly. Of course. Su Yu did not move, but panic suddenly appeared on Emperor Chen's face. His head turned uncontrollably toward Su Yu, and he was forced to look at Su Yu with his eyes. I think that looking into someone's eyes when they are talking to you is the most basic form of courtesy, Su Yu said calmly. Emperor Chen was shocked and asked, "What did you do? Is this the latest weapon developed by the Eastern War Zone? It could actually force a person's body to move against his will. You can think of it that way, but I prefer to call it a divine technique," Su Yu said. At that moment, Emperor Chen felt the invisible force dissipate, but he did not dare to underestimate this so-called martial artist anymore. "That doesn't prove that your little divine technique could easily kill my son." Emperor Chen knew what had happened to his son's injuries, but no matter what, he had to insist that it was Su Yu who had done it. Su Yu's eyes were calm as he asked, "Then what kind of divine technique do you think would be able to kill your son?" Emperor Chen chuckled. "At least something like the 5-blow thunderstruck technique?" The generals behind him burst out laughing. "What martial artist from the ancient martial arts civilization? I've never heard of it. I have no idea what it is. Just a little trick, and I thought I was some kind of god." Even with the abilities of the ancient martial arts civilization, they were unable to interfere with natural thunderbolts, let alone a weird-looking man. Su Yu was not angered. Instead, he said with nostalgia, "I haven't used thunderbolts for a long time, so I'm a little rusty. I don't know the 5-blow thunderstruck technique, but I do know a little of the divine techniques that are similar." He sat firmly in his seat, raised his hand to the sky, and snapped his fingers. Calmly, he said, "Thunder, come!" Boom! Boom! All of a sudden, the sky above the entire civilization was covered by a thick layer of dark clouds. The sky, which had been sunny just a moment ago, turned dark in an instant. Bolts of purple, red, and black thunderbolts flashed continuously in the layers of clouds, bursting forth with continuous thunderous roars. The deafening rumble shook everyone's eardrums. The mighty power of the heavens made everyone present scream in terror, as if their civilization was about to be destroyed. The timid one's legs had already turned to jelly, and they could no longer sit still, sliding down from their seat. Even Long Lan and the others on their side were frightened by the destructive power of the heavens, and their hearts were filled with fear. Was that really humanly possible? Even though Yi Mingxian had mentally prepared herself, she was still deeply shocked, and her eyes were filled with longing. Was this the true power of a martial artist? He could command the divine thunder of heaven and earth with just a glance. "Run, quickly!" Among the generals behind Emperor Chen, some of the more timid ones finally could not bear the psychological pressure, and they screamed as they turned to flee. Even Emperor Chen's heart trembled, and he could not help but tremble all over. He wanted to escape. Boom! 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 Right at that moment, tens of thousands of thunderbolts descended in a straight line, densely packed, and dazzling the entire world. All that was left in everyone's eyes was the inextinguishable thunderbolts that filled the sky, and the scorching aura of the earth that had been destroyed by the thunderbolts. A moment later, all the thunderbolts had fallen. The sky regained its brightness, and the entire world was unprecedentedly quiet. Other than the sizzling sounds coming from the scorched earth, there was no other noise. Everyone was petrified on the spot, because what appeared before their eyes was a terrifying scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Other than 1,000 feet around them, as far as the eye could see, everything had been blasted into smithereens by the thunderbolts. The entire ground had been blasted into a depth of 1,000 feet. All they could see were burning broken branches and withered leaves, and the pungent scorching aura. You are a god! Emperor Chen stood up, trembling. He looked at Su Yu with eyes full of endless fear. Long Lan and the others were also trembling, and they revered Su Yu as if he were a god. Su Yu stood up slowly and said calmly, "Using a cheap word like god to describe me is a little rude. The realm of a true god was probably as insignificant as a speck of dust compared to the realm of an emperor." He looked at Chen Tianqing, who was trembling all over. With just a glance, Chen Tianqing could no longer stand, and he fell to his knees with a thud. "Now, do you still think I will fail to assassinate you?" Su Yu asked with his hands behind his back. Everyone knew that there was no need to assassinate Chen Tianqing. Even if he hid among thousands of soldiers and horses, a single word from Su Yu could still turn him into ashes. "Father, save me!" At that moment, Chen Tianqing had lost all of his arrogance and condescension. With a hoarse and trembling voice, he begged Emperor Chen for help. However, Emperor Chen was also trembling all over. He reached out to Su Yu with a trembling hand and said, Mr. Su, please don't take it to heart." Su Yu put his hands behind his back, and he had no intention of shaking hands with him. How could he be worthy of shaking hands with Su Yu? "What if I take it to heart?" Su Yu asked coldly. Emperor Chen's heart trembled. He turned to look at his son and said, "Tianqing, apologize to Mr. Su." Chapter 2022. Emperor Chen's heart sank as he asked, "Mr. Su, what do you want?" Su Yu looked at Chen Tianqing calmly and said, "Since you like to cut off your own arm so much, you can do it again." Hearing this, Chen Tianqing's face trembled. His arm had been cut off thanks to the advanced technology of the Western Battle Zone. It was painless and painless. Moreover, it could be reattached after a month without any side effect. How could he have the courage to cut off another arm right in front of him? If his arm couldn't be reattached in the future, he would be a cripple for the rest of his life. How could a playboy like him bear the pain of losing an arm? "Father!" Chen Tianqing looked at Emperor Chen for help again. However, Emperor Chen's face was calm. He took out a laser knife and said, "Tianqing, you should pay the price for offending Mr. Su. Grit your teeth." Emperor Chen slashed with the long knife in his hand. A dazzling laser swept past and cut off Chen Tianqing's remaining right arm. Chen Tianqing screamed in pain, then fainted on the spot. "Take him away." Emperor Chen waved his hand. Immediately, soldiers carried Chen Tianqing away for emergency treatment. "Mr. Su, are you satisfied?" Emperor Chen bowed respectfully. Although Su Yu could clearly hear the endless hatred and murderous intent in Emperor Chen's heart, Emperor Chen didn't show any disrespect on his face. Su Yu turned around and looked at Long Lan and the others. "The matter has been resolved. Go back. I will teach the martial path before I leave." He didn't mean it, but the listener did. Emperor Chen asked, "Mr. Su, may I ask if the martial path is only taught to the Eastern Battle Zone?" "Yes, is there a problem?" Su Yu looked at him. Emperor Chen looked around and said, "What price did the Eastern Battle Zone pay to hire Mr. Su?" Hearing this, Long Lan and Yi Mingxuan's expressions changed slightly. However, since Su Yu was there, they couldn't refute him. 1,000 giant warships, Su Yu said calmly. Long Lan knew that this was bad. They had clearly offered Su Yu 100 warships. Su Yu was trying to raise the price, and he was leaning toward Emperor Chen's camp. Emperor Chen nodded to himself. If such a powerful god was willing to pass down his equally powerful martial arts, it was not impossible to exchange for 1,000 giant warships. Emperor Chen gritted his teeth and said, We, the Western Theater of Operations, are willing to pay double the number of warships to invite Mr. Su to our Western Theater of Operations to teach martial arts." Without giving Long Lon and the others a chance to speak, Su Yu said, "If the Western Battlefront wants me to impart the 5 paths to you, you'll need at least 10,000 giant warships." 10,000? Emperor Chen gasped. The number of battleships was almost 3/4 of what he had. "If you think it's too much, then forget it," Su Yu said indifferently, then turned around and left. Long Lon and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Su Yu didn't have any intention of sincerely teaching them the martial path. If Mr. Su can guarantee that they have 1% of Mr. Su's strength just now, I will agree. However, Chen Huang was unusually decisive. He could see the terror of martial arts and divine arts, which were far more powerful than the system of force they had before. One person was comparable to hundreds of thousands of warship. If they could create more than 10 martial artists, then this deal would not be a loss. I personally nurtured him. How could his strength only be 1/100th of mine? His strength is equal to mine. It wasn't difficult for Su Yu. All he had to do was select someone from among them who had reached the level of a 3-crown emperor and teach him some basic usage of the power, which would be much more powerful than the thunderbolt just now. Really? Emperor Chen was suddenly excited. I agree. How about we sign the agreement now? Su Yu said, no problem. He walked into the camp of the Western Battlefront with a smile. Long Lan's pupils shrank. She hadn't expected this. Su Yu had obviously come to help them, but he had betrayed them at the last minute. It couldn't be said that he had betrayed them, but that he had joined the enemy's camp. Yi Mingxuan's heart trembled. She stared in disbelief at Su Yu's back as he signed the agreement with the other party. The tall figure in her mind was quickly becoming blurry. Is he really that kind of person? It turns out that I never understood him. Would he give up everything as long as the benefits were right? She thought back to the 2 months they had spent together. She thought back to everything that had happened between them, and she felt that everything was unreal. Mr. Su, we have an agreement, Long Lan said hurriedly. If Su Yu taught the martial path to the Western Battlefront, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the Eastern Battlefront. After Su Yu signed the agreement, he turned around and smiled. I'm sorry, but Commander Chen's offer is better. Long Lan clenched her teeth and said anxiously in a low voice, Deputy Commander Yi, please plead for him. You two are so close, is it okay? I don't think so. Yi Mingxuan's face was cold, and she regained her usual indifference. She said, people strive for higher places, and water flows to lower places. Why should we force him? She turned her head away and didn't look at Su Yu again. No one knew how lonely she felt at the moment. For a moment, she thought that she had fallen in love with someone. It turned out that it was just an illusion. Sadness, bitterness, disappointment. All kinds of emotions mixed together and filled her heart. The sense of fulfillment that she had gained from her wonderful experiences in the past 2 months had vanished in an instant. Deputy Commander Yi is still very understanding, he. Su Yu smiled calmly and said, Commander Chen, let's go. Show me around the Western Battlefront. Emperor Chen was overjoyed. He led the generals to congratulate Su Yu as he boarded the warship and sailed into the vast Western Battlefront. Long Lan was stunned for a long time. The accompanying deputy commanders and generals also felt disappointed, shocked, and uneasy. What would happen to them if Su Yu joined the Western Battlefront? What an unforgettable meeting! Long Lan looked up at the sky and sighed bitterly. He still didn't understand why Su Yu had asked for a meeting between the two commanders. It turned out that this was the reason. He wanted to show Emperor Chen his martial path in front of him and ask for more benefit. The Star Dream Chamber of Commerce had just annihilated an entire team in the Eastern Battlefront. They didn't have more than 10,000 warships, so they couldn't compete with the Western Battlefront. Let's go. Long Lan looked at Yi Mingxian, who was facing away from the crowd. He knew that Yi Mingxian was more disappointed than anyone else. In the Western battlefront, compared to the Eastern battlefront, the Western battlefront's civilization was obviously more advanced, and it had developed many advanced technologies. Su Yu wasn't interested in this. He said, "Ask the 10 people in your camp with the highest awakening abilities to come out. I will teach them first, and then they will teach the rest of the people. You can come too, and bring your son with you." Emperor Chen was overjoyed. "I will make arrangements to find the people for Su Yu before the end of the day." He was quite efficient. By nightfall, he had already picked out 10 people who had reached the level of 4 crown emperors. Including Emperor Chen and his son, there were a total of 12 people. However, Chen Tianqing was lying on a stretcher, unable to move. Emperor Chen was full of anticipation, but the rest of the people didn't know what the so-called divine technique was. "I know what you are thinking. Before I explain the divine technique, let me demonstrate it to you." Su Yu pointed at Chen Tianqing, who was lying on the ground, and said, "Can your most advanced technology create something out of nothing? Can a person whose arm has been cut off regrow it?" "Of course not." The crowd looked at each other strangely. It was possible to reattach a severed arm with the current technology. But creating something out of nothing did not conform to the scientific theories they were researching. "Then, the divine technique will do." Su Yu pointed at Chen Tianqing's severed arm. Then, to everyone's shock, countless blood vessels, bones, and flesh appeared on the arm. It was a mythical scene of an arm being reconstructed. Ah! How is this possible? What kind of technology is this? How can a person regrow a new arm out of nothing? The 10 people were completely shocked. Su Yu said calmly, "Let me repeat for the last time. This is a divine technique, not a technology deeply rooted in your mind." "Divine technique? What is a divine technique?" Su Yu said, "Divine technique is what I am going to teach you next. For the next month, you will be isolated from all contact with the outside world and listen to my lectures." Under Emperor Chen's arrangement, the 12 of them were isolated from the outside world. Su Yu explained the martial theory to them in detail, and gradually guided them to learn how to use the awakened power in their bodies to perform various divine techniques. The whole process was carried out in an orderly manner. After a month, the 12 of them had learned the basic control of their power. This included flying at high speed, using desolate force to attack, and performing basic divine technique. The more profound rules required personal comprehension. Su Yu couldn't teach them, and he wouldn't teach them. "From now on, you can choose your own successors and pass on everything you have learned," Su Yu said thoughtfully. Su Yu said profoundly, "During this period of time, do not look for me for anything. Even if you do, it will be useless." "Yes, Mr. Su." They didn't quite understand what Su Yu meant. What did he mean by not looking for him for anything? Could it be that something bad was going to happen? But no matter what, they had obtained a power that was close to that of a god, and their mentality had changed drastically. Emperor Chen said, "I will mobilize 10,000 soldiers whose awakened power has reached a high level. Each of you will lead 1,000 soldiers. You must train them well, understand?" "Understood." Emperor Chen revealed his deep ambition. His current power was comparable to what Su Yu had shown that day. If there were 10,000 soldiers like him, what would the Eastern battle zone amount to? What would the Northern and Southern battle zones amount to? What would the Nirvanas who ruled over them amount to? He would eventually become the master of the entire civilization system. After sending Su Yu off respectfully, Chen Tianqing clenched his fists, his heart filled with boundless excitement. Staring at the direction in which Su Yu had left, he said, "Father, as the saying goes, the bough will be removed when the birds are dead, and the hounds will be cooked when the rabbits are dead. As long as Su Yu is here, he will be more powerful than us. In the future, the martial artists who are born will only know Su Yu, but not us. This is not a good thing." Even though he had benefited from Su Yu's lectures and had become a martial artist, He had never forgotten the hatred of taking away Yimingxian and the pain of losing his arm. In the past, he had never dared to think about revenge. But now that they had the same power as Su Yu, why should they bow to him? Emperor Chen's gaze was distant as he calmly said, "You have such thoughts, but don't you think I don't?" However, Su Yu definitely did not pass on everything to us. He must have hidden other powers, and we are no match for him now. But if we were to nurture thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of martial artists, would Su Yu be able to stop so many people? Chen Tianxing's eyes flashed with anger. Humph! We will let him live for a while. When we have enough power, we will make him kneel before us. I will make him watch as his woman falls into my hands. Chapter 2023. Su Yu left the barracks and went to the core research center of the Western Battle Zone. In the Jiawu civilization, other than mechas, Su Yu was most interested in the mysterious elixir. Something that could allow the power of awakening to evolve. Only Su Yu knew that the elixir they were developing was something that could increase one's cultivation level. With Su Yu's status, he could enter the research center without any obstruction. He could view even the most important things. Their elixirs were divided into 9 levels. The highest level of elixir was called the Death Elixir. It could allow a 3-crown emperor to break through to a 4-crown emperor. But the failure rate was extremely high as 90%. Once it failed, there would be death. Those who could eventually become 4-crown emperors were extremely rare. But only Su Yu knew how amazing this elixir was. In the ancient martial civilization, the probability of a 3-crown emperor breaking through to a 4-crown emperor was less than 1%. Most 3-crown emperors would remain at this level, unable to break through for the rest of their lives. Only a few people with strong luck could find their own opportunities to break through to 4-crown emperors. The elixir before him had a success rate of 10%. In the ancient martial civilization, it would be an earth-shattering achievement. People would definitely snatch it away. How many level 9 elixirs do we have in storage, and how many can we make in 8 months? Su Yu asked the person in charge of the research center. There are only 9,000 elixirs in storage, and 1,000 can be made in 8 months. But who is Mr. Su going to use it on? Before reaching the end of their lifespan, very few are willing to try it, the person in charge said. The Jiawu civilization's understanding of the power of awakening was limited to the fact that the higher the level of awakening, the longer one's lifespan. Without absolute certainty, very few people were willing to use level 9 elixirs. Okay, give me 10 first. The person in charge did not dare refuse, immediately handing over 10 elixirs. Su Yu found a quiet room and immediately began researching the level 9 elixirs, paying no attention to the outside world. 8 months passed. The entire Western Battle Zone was filled with martial arts teachings. Millions of people were successfully taught the basics of martial art. The weakest of them had the cultivation level of an overlord, and the strongest were 4-crown emperors. The huge army of martial artists in front of them had perfectly met the requirements of Emperor Chen and his son. But now, they were not in the mood to cause trouble for Su Yu. Instead, they had repeatedly sought help from Su Yu, but Su Yu had avoided them. That was because, among the original 12 students, the strongest 4-crown Emperor Peak General had led an army of 100,000 to rebel. The general realized that he was far more powerful than Emperor Chen, so why did he continue to serve him? The teaching of the basics of martial arts not only changed the way the armies fought in the Western theater of operations, but it also severely impacted the system of power. In the past, military power reigned supreme, but now, strength reigned supreme. His betrayal had indirectly led to the betrayal of the 7 generals of the 4-crown emperors. Each of them had their own territory and proclaimed themselves as the overlords. Moreover, they were still frantically expanding their martial artists, all of them wanting to become the overlords of the Western War Zone. Emperor Chen and his remaining followers had no choice but to encircle the 8 rebel generals. At first, he was still able to suppress them. But in the end, they formed an alliance of 2s and 3s and formed a resistance against Emperor Chen. The entire Western War Zone was in a state of chaos. Not only did Emperor Chen fail to dominate the civilization department, but he couldn't even defend his base. The civilization that the Western War Zone had painstakingly built up was destroyed by the terrifying bombardment of the divine arts. Even if Emperor Chen reunited the Western theater of operations, the prosperity of the past would never return. As the culprit, Su Yu was analyzing the level 9 medicine in the secret room. He didn't ask about what was happening in the outside world, because everything was within his expectations. Now, there's only one thing left to verify. Su Yu looked at the sky, then looked at the level 9 medicine in his hand. After a year of research, he had already made some progress. He was trying to find ways to improve the ingredients that could cause death, trying to reduce their negative effect. After a few more years of research, he estimated that he would be able to optimize it in the way of martial arts. Now, it's time to return to the ancient martial civilization. Su Yu took out a ticket, a look of nostalgia on his face. He said softly, "Goodbye. Take care." He seemed to see a valiant goddess of war standing on the Black Star ship, commanding the invincible battleship from afar, and fighting in the galaxy. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared into thin air, never to be seen again. At the same time, a serious theft occurred in the Research and Development Center of the Western War Zone. The Level 9 medicine in storage, along with 1,000 of the most recently developed ones, were all stolen. The powerful defense of the treasury was useless, and not even the alarm sounded. 2 months later, a huge passenger ship with the word Epic carved on its hull flew over the Western War Zone, slowly flying toward the center of the system of civilizations. A figure silently flew into the cabin of the ship. Standing at the top of the passenger ship, Su Yu looked down at the smoke-filled Western War Zone, waiting quietly. A month later, just as the luminous ship was about to leave the Western War Zone, Su Yu suddenly opened his eyes and looked deep into the Western War Zone. He saw terrifying giant palms appear without warning, slamming toward the Western War Zone. In the blink of an eye, millions of martial artists in the entire Western battlefront were instantly turned to ashes. Including Chen Huang, Chen Tianqing, and the 10 martial artists from the first batch, all of them were killed. Anyone who cultivated the foundations of martial arts could not escape this calamity. The war-torn Western War Zone fell into a long period of peace and quiet. We meet again. Su Yu stared at the giant palms that covered the sky, his eyes calm and without the slightest hint of emotion. He was not a person who would forget his principles for the sake of profit. He had his reasons for moving from the Eastern War Zone to the Western War Zone. In the past, when Long Lan accidentally arrived at the ancient martial civilization, she was forcibly brought back to the Jiao warrior civilization and had her memory erased. It was clear that there was an invisible giant hand in the Jiao warrior civilization, cutting off the communication between the two civilizations. Therefore, he had always been worried about whether it was appropriate to teach the foundations of martial arts to the Eastern War Zone. Coincidentally, the Western War Zone had provoked him, so he decided to use the Western War Zone as a test subject. If they could cultivate the martial path, no one would stop them. He would teach the Eastern War Zone a higher level of the martial path. But now, it seemed that his concerns were correct. There was indeed a will in this civilization that prevented the Jiao warrior civilization from developing toward the martial path. Anyone who cultivated the martial path would be mercilessly erased. Looking forward, Su Yu lightly shook his head. I can't go to the Ecliptic Palace. Since he had confirmed the existence of this invisible giant hand, going to the Ecliptic Palace was tantamount to seeking death. With a silent sigh, he took out a talisman. After activating it, a giant warship appeared. Jumping off the luminous ship, Su Yu boarded the warship and headed in another direction. 10 years later, at the end of the civilization system, A space storm that blotted out the sky was raging at the edge of the four universal civilizations. This was the absolute barrier that isolated the Jiao warrior civilization from exploring the outside world. The space storm was extremely destructive. Even the most advanced warship of the Jiao warrior civilization could not withstand the tearing of the space and was instantly crushed by the power of the space. In front of this destructive spatial storm, there was a huge ship slowly sailing over. On the giant warship, a silver-haired youth stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Facing the terrifying space storm, his eyes were calm as he nodded slightly. It was not in vain that I gave up on the ecliptic palace and came to the border to take a look. If he had ridden on the Epic, it would only take a few years to reach the ecliptic palace of the Thunder Fairy. But sensing the huge conspiracy pervading the Jiao warrior civilization, he maintained an extremely high level of vigilance toward the ecliptic palace and chose to come to the border to take a look. Fortunately, for the people of the Jiao warrior civilization, these space storms were insurmountable. But for Su Yu, who had mastered the law of space, it was not considered dangerous. Putting away the giant warship, Su Yu leaped into the space storm. Wherever he passed, the space storm made way for him, allowing him to pass easily. After traveling for an entire year, all of a sudden, a breath that he had not felt for a long time flowed into his heart. He took out the talisman and released the warship. Before the storm could shatter it, it instantly rushed out. A vast, pitch-black nothingness poured into his eyes. Looking at a small civilization not far away, he saw. With a sweep of his powerful soul, he saw quaint shops, groups of martial artists who were diligently training, rich spiritual herbs, divine energy, the familiar scenery, the familiar breath, and everything was familiar. I'm finally back. Su Yu breathed a deep sigh of relief. The 15 years that had passed seemed like a dream. He looked behind him and saw a spherical space storm that radiated a boundless area, quietly rotating in the nothingness and constantly rotating further away. Su Yu watched it leave his line of sight bit by bit, finally turning into a speck of dust and disappearing at the end of the nothingness. "Goodbye," Su Yu said softly. Inside the Jiao warrior civilization, the huge warship of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce gathered in a huge relic suspended in the nothingness. It was an ancient palace that was extremely huge, comparable to a small civilization. The palace seemed to be made of ordinary green bricks and stone tiles, but the attacks of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce for nearly 15 years had not damaged the palace in the slightest. Not even a single tile was damaged. The gate of the palace was tightly shut and had never been opened in the slightest. However, on this day, the gate of the palace opened silently. The 3 deputy commanders of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce were deeply shocked and hurriedly ordered, "All personnel, get ready to enter." Suddenly, hundreds of millions of small flying mechas flew down from thousands of giant warships. Like a pitch-black tide, they rushed into the slowly opening giant gate. However, at this moment, a feminine man with a plum blossom mark between his brows walked out from the gate. A pair of dim yellow eyes exuded a faint pressure, but there was no fluctuation in his entire body. If Su Yu was here, he would definitely recognize that he was the feminine man who accompanied Qing Yun in the Purple Lizard civilization. It was him who crushed the Purple Lizard civilization with a speck of dust from the Holy Mountain. It caused Su Yu and the others to be transported across civilizations and ended up in the Jiao warrior civilization. As soon as he appeared, his dim yellow eyes glanced indifferently at the members of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce who were surging in like a tide. He snorted softly. "Ants!" As his voice fell, there seemed to be an invisible shock wave sweeping out in an arc. All of a sudden, all the creatures were annihilated into dust. Tens of thousands of giant warships were also annihilated into particles, drifting in the nothingness. The entire nothingness fell into silence. The feminine man looked displeased and said lightly, 4 pieces of trash, How dare you let the martial path flow into the third experimental area, almost destroying the experimental area. When he finished speaking, he stepped into the nothingness. He was completely unafraid of the power of nothingness and walked in it. Chapter 2024. Rain Immortal Civilization System. Eastern War Zone, in front of a villa in the Central Civilization. A gentleman, holding a bouquet of flowers, placed it in front of the villa. Mingxian, I hope you're just as happy today. The man was Long Lan's nephew, Long Yun. He was also Yi Mingxuan's loyal suitor. He persisted for 20 years, relentlessly pursuing it. Finally, 1 year ago, Yi Mingxian agreed to his request and became his girlfriend. Long Yun was very excited. Although Yi Mingxian didn't want to have any intimate actions with him, he was still very excited and sent a bouquet of flowers to her villa every day. His tireless efforts and perseverance had finally paid off. 3 days ago, Yi Mingxian had accepted his proposal. Today was the day of their engagement. Long Yun's mind was filled with happiness. He could finally get what he wanted and stay with his beloved goddess for a long time. Yi Mingxian appeared on the balcony of the second floor. She was wearing an elegant white dress and had a head full of black hair. 12 years had passed, and she had shed the last trace of a young girl's inexperience, revealing the mellowness that a person of her age should have. His entire body blossomed with a radiance that no one could look at directly. Long Yun was dumbfounded. Thank you. Yi Mingxian smiled faintly, but there was a hint of emptiness in her smile. Wait for me. Before I leave, I want to take care of something. Yi Mingxian returned to the bedroom and opened the bedside cabinet. An exquisite wooden box lay quietly in it. The surface of the wooden box was as clean as new, without a speck of dust. She reached out her hand and gently stroked the wooden box with her fingers. She murmured desolately, "So, it's been 12 years. For a martial artist, 12 years might pass in the blink of an eye. But for someone like her who only had a few hundred years to live, how many 12 years was there in her life?" She had kept the wooden box for 12 years. It was cleaned and wiped every day, like the most precious treasure in his life. But in 12 years, she had never opened it, because she was afraid that once it was opened, it would never be closed again. I'm going to get married. I can't bring you with me anymore. Yi Mingxian looked lonely. Maybe I shouldn't have stayed. Her fingers trembled as she opened the wooden box. A communication device appeared before his eyes. It was an obsolete, old-fashioned message machine from at least 12 years ago. It had been placed in the wooden box for too long, and the information device seemed to be very old. However, when she saw it, Yi Mingxuan's eyes flickered, and she covered her mouth with her hand. It was as if the memories of the past, which she had long since forgotten, were flooding back to her. This was the only thing Su Yu had ever used and left behind. It was here that Su Yu read the books about the 4 universal civilizations that were stored. He stayed in his villa for 2 months. Other than that, he was like a cool breeze blowing across the azure sky, leaving nothing behind. Why can't I forget you? Yi Mingxian whispered. I should hate you. 12 years ago, when the 2 great commanders of the East and West met, it was a scene that Yi Mingxian would never forget. 1. She felt that it was impossible to betray the person, abandoned her. After that, there was no more news. Whether it was good or bad, alive or dead, there was no news at all. She had once lost her sense of self, forcing herself to not think about Su Yu and the scene of his betrayal. 11 years later, she was almost overwhelmed by work. Under the persuasion of Long Lan and the 3 deputy commanders, Yi Mingxian finally decided to free herself. Perhaps only by finding a man she could rely on could she completely forget the past. Therefore, she agreed to Long Yun's proposal. If she became someone else's bride, he would care for her. Perhaps she would slowly forget the pain of betrayal. Or rather, she would forget someone. Staring at the information device in front of her, Yi Mingxian closed her eyes and murmured, "It's time to say goodbye to the past." Taking out a laser knife, She closed her eyes with trembling hands and slashed down decisively. However, just as she was about to slash down, she felt a tinge of regret in her heart. This was the only thing he had. If it was destroyed, it would be gone forever. However, the tip of the knife had already slashed across the information device, splitting it into two and completely destroying it. No! Yi Mingxian regretted it. She put away the laser knife and opened her eyes. What came into view was the information device, which had been destroyed beyond recognition. Yi Mingxuan's eyes lost focus. She stared at it blankly, motionless. In the end, it was still destroyed, buzz, buzz, buzz. However, the strange thing was that the destroyed information device fused on its own. The information device, which had not been charged for 12 years and could not be turned on, actually lit up. A portrait suddenly appeared on the screen. I don't know how much time has passed by the time you see this image. The voice that she had not heard for 12 years suddenly entered her ears. Yi Mingxian, who was in a daze, trembled violently. She stared at the information device on the ground in disbelief. She stuttered out a name that she had not heard in 12 years. Su. You. The condition for the image to appear is that the information device must have left the villa or been destroyed. Based on my calculations, when you returned from the border of the eastern and western battlefields, you would have thrown away or destroyed the only thing I had left behind. Yi Mingxian was shocked. When she had left the eastern battlefields, Su Yu had predicted that she would return and destroy everything. Had he known that she would join the western battlefields before leaving the eastern battlefields? With your intelligence, you must have realized that I had planned to join the western battlefields, Su Yu continued. The reason was that I had been worried about one problem. Teaching you the martial path might not have been a wise decision. So, I used the western battlefields as a test site. If they were safe, I would return to teach you even more powerful martial paths. If the western battlefields were destroyed and all the martial artists were killed by a mysterious force, I would not return. Yi Mingxian nodded blankly. Yes. You joined the western battlefields, and they were destroyed a year later. If you see this image, I believe that I have already left for many years. Because, if Su Yu had returned, he would have destroyed this image. Yi Mingxian could see that he had not returned. Because it involved the secrets of the Jiao warrior civilization, it was inconvenient for me to tell you. So, I made the decision to join the western battlefield. If I have harmed any of you, please apologize on my behalf. Seeing this, Yi Mingxuan's mind buzzed. So, he had never betrayed her, never abandoned her. He had done this to protect them. Mingxian, cultivating martial arts, especially powerful divine arts, is a great taboo for your Jiao warrior civilization. Therefore, I've left behind the martial arts foundation of longevity. If you succeed in cultivating it, you'll be able to live for billions of years and retain your youth forever. As long as you change your identity every few hundred years, you will be able to avoid the eyes and ears of those forces. But, remember, you cannot pass it on to a second person. Otherwise, once it spreads, you will not be able to escape death. Yi Mingxian held the information device, tears streaming down her cheeks. The goddess of war, who never cried, was sobbing hysterically at this moment. I'm sorry. I have misunderstood you for 12 years. After learning the truth, Yi Mingxian suddenly felt great sorrow and self-blame. Su Yu had been so considerate of them, but she had held a grudge for 12 years. Are you well now? Where are you? Will you come back? Yi Mingxian continued to ask. But that was just a projection. He would not answer any of her questions, and only cared about explaining the relevant martial path. Yi Mingxian could not hear a single word. She only wanted to know if that man would come back. Long Yun waited outside for a long time. Seeing no movement, he could not help but call out, Mingxian, are you done? Only then did Yi Mingxian recover from her absent-mindedness. She looked at Su Yu's projection and hugged him tightly. She muttered to herself, I am so foolish. How could I think that I could forget you just by finding a man, after tidying up her makeup, Yi Mingxian went downstairs and stood in front of Long Yun. Long Yun stared at Yi Mingxian in front of him, feeling extremely unfamiliar. Unlike the faint loneliness of the past 12 years, the current Yi Mingxian had regained her radiance. She was charming, just like the all-powerful goddess of war from 12 years ago. Mingxian, it's almost time. Let's hurry to the engagement venue. The commander and deputy commanders are all waiting. He did not finish his sentence, because Yi Mingxian had already handed him an exquisite small box. Inside was the engagement ring that Long Yun had given her, and he was going to put it on her personally later. I'm sorry, but I think I still can't forget him. Shoving the small box into his hands, Yi Mingxian walked away alone, slowly disappearing into the crowd. Since then, the goddess of war, Yi Mingxian, had disappeared from the world, never to be seen again. Long Yun stood rooted to the ground, his expression gloomy. He muttered, I knew it. Even if he had left for 12 years, I would not have been able to beat his shadow, ancient martial civilization. A gigantic battleship sped through the void at high speed. The meteor riders along the way were all shocked by the scene. My God, what is that? Is it a treasure? Its shape is so strange, I have never seen it before. Things from the Jia warrior civilization were naturally shocking in the ancient martial civilization. Su Yu was expressionless as he made his final dash in the cabin. Over the past 10 years, he had tried many times and finally improved most of the level 9 potion. After drinking it, the negative effects of failure were only the weakening of the flesh and the reduction of one's lifespan by 100 years. For the divine warriors of heaven and earth, their lifespans were hundreds of millions of years. Losing one's lifespan by 1,000 years did not affect them much. Moreover, once the breakthrough was successful, the increase in lifespan would be tens of millions of years. This disadvantage was negligible. He tried to drink a bottle, and suddenly felt as if a mass of burning magma had been forced into his mouth. It was extremely painful. Subconsciously, he wanted to vomit. But when he recalled Xia Jingyu and Qin Xianer's faces, he gritted his teeth and forced himself to swallow it. One of them was in the Divine Lady clan, and the other was in the Azura world. If he went there without enough strength, could he take them away? The answer was no. As the potion entered his body, the pain became even more intense. Su Yu felt as if his whole body was burning from the inside out. The muscles on his cheeks squirmed, and his whole body trembled uncontrollably. His whole soul was suffering an unprecedented impact, and the intense pain almost made him pass out. He gritted his teeth and held on with great willpower. Half a day had passed, and Su Yu was sweating profusely. His eyes were slightly protruding, and patches of blood veins densely covered his eyeballs, showing that his spirit was greatly depleted. All of a sudden, he coughed up a large amount of divine blood and woke up from his meditation. A bitter smile flashed across his face. My luck is not that good. Chapter 2025. Su Yu took out another bottle of medicine. The pain of the medicine was far beyond imagination. In the Jia warrior civilization, many people died in the process of taking the medicine. It was not because of the medicine itself, but because of the intense pain that caused the collapse of the soul. There is no more time. The closer he got to the advanced civilization, the more urgent Su Yu felt. After a short rest, he raised his head and swallowed another bottle. The cycle repeated until 5 days later, a powerful vortex appeared around Su Yu, sucking in the divine energy from all directions. There was a drastic change in the world inside. It was not until a day later that the vision gradually stopped. His whole body was emitting a faint fluorescent light, and 4 vague shadows of crowns floated above his head. Phew! I finally broke through to the 4-crown emperor. Su Yu breathed a sigh of relief. He swallowed more than a dozen bottles in a row before finally breaking through. He thought he would need the help of the Bodhi fruit in the Zodiac Palace, but by chance, He obtained the medicine of the Jia warrior civilization and broke through first. His cultivation was that of a 4-crown emperor, and his soul power was very close to that of a 5-crown emperor because he had devoured the souls of several 5-crown emperors. In terms of divine skills, the demon sword technique had been quietly comprehended for 10 years, and he had already touched the edge of the 8th style, nameless. What he needed was to hone this sword through actual combat. The Evil Dragon Bible, after borrowing the dragon blood of the fire dragon for a long time, had also made great progress, directly cultivating the first stage to the late stage. Now, after the transformation, his physique was comparable to a 4-crown emperor in the late stage. If Su Yu fought with all his strength, he should be able to fight a 4-crown emperor in the late stage. Few people under the late stage could rival Su Yu. As he slowly practiced, the giant ship broke through the boundless void and quickly reached the 5-star civilization, the 4-symbols civilization. He was lucky. After leaving the Jia warrior civilization, he asked around and found out that he had appeared in a civilization close to the 4-symbols civilization. The two places were not far apart, and it would take a year to use the transportation portal. But with the spaceship, it would only take half a year. A few months later, Su Yu finally reached the edge of the 4-symbols civilization. To prevent the spaceship from attracting too much attention, he landed in a satellite civilization in advance and entered the 4-symbols civilization through the intercivilization transportation portal. They were both 5-star civilizations, but Su Yu deeply felt the gap between the Tai Chi civilization and the 4-symbols civilization. The 4-symbols civilization was not only 100 times larger than the Tai Chi civilization, but all the regions were also quite developed, and the degree of prosperity was unparalleled. Su Yu sighed inwardly. After asking around, he arrived at the 4-symbol mansion, where the master of civilization resided. The area of the 4-symbol manor was not large, even smaller than the mansions of many 5-crown sovereigns. However, no one dared to underestimate the 4-symbol mansion, because it was that legendary half-step Dowlord who resided within. Although his illness was beyond cure, he had not died yet, so who would dare to underestimate him? Su Yu came to visit. At the door was the 4-symbol manor's housekeeper Qin. He sized Su Yu up and asked, "Who are you?" Su Yu took out the token of the master of the Tai Chi faction. Butler Qin said, "Are you the Taiji sect master that Miss Yun mentioned?" "That's me," Su Yu said. It seemed like even though they had been separated back then, Yun Qianshuang had returned to the 4-symbol mansion first and informed the people in the mansion. "Why are you so late?" Butler Qin said unhappily. Su Yu was slightly startled. He had come here to deliver the Path Master's bone to the terminally ill half-step Tao Master, so it was quite unexpected for him to be treated this way. Su Yu did not mind it at all, so he said, "Please inform the mansion master." Butler Qin furrowed his brows slightly. "The mansion master is busy with many affairs every day, so he doesn't have the time to receive guests. He instructed me to arrange for you to stay in the mansion for the time being, and he will come to see you once he is done with his work." Su Yu's expression was calm. He had come from afar to deliver the medicine, yet the other party did not even give him a basic reception. Even if he did not expect the mansion master to receive him personally, he could at least let the mansion's juniors receive him. Su Yu shook his head lightly, then took out a finger-long Path Master's bone, which he had prepared in advance, and stuffed it into Butler Qin's hands. "This is the Path Master's bone that you wanted. Please give it to Miss Yun, and ask her to prepare the invitation to attend the Ecliptic Palace." After he spoke, he turned around and prepared to leave. However, just as he was about to leave, a familiar aura approached him from within the 4-symbol mansion. It was Yun Qianshuang, who wore a pleasantly surprised look on her face. She looked Su Yu up and down and said, "Thank the heavens you are still alive." Su Yu nodded calmly. "Yes, my luck isn't bad. Why are you standing outside? Don't you want to come in?" Yun Qianshuang asked. Su Yu looked at Butler Qin, then shook his head slightly. There is no need for that. I have already given the Path Master's bone to you, so you can just help me pass it to the Mansion Master. Once the invitation is ready, you can contact me and send it to me. Yun Qianshuang furrowed her brows, then reprimanded him. Su Yu, you have come to the Four-Symbol Mansion, yet you are not even willing to meet my father. Aren't you being too rude? Su Yu did not explain, but calmly said, Just take it that I am being rude. Farewell. The Four-Symbol Mansion's threshold was too high, and he could not enter. How can you be like this? Yun Qianshuang pulled Su Yu back, then said, This matter concerns the invitation, and I need you to discuss it with my father in detail. It is not something that I can handle alone. Hearing this, Su Yu stopped in his tracks, then said, Then I will meet him. Su Yu took back the Path Master's bone from Butler Qin's hands, then followed Yun Qianshuang into the Four-Symbol Mansion. The mansion was majestic, and every part of it was filled with a mysterious atmosphere. The most amazing thing was that there was a sealed stone tablet in the depths of the mansion, which was emitting the mysterious energy of a Path Master. Training under the stone tablet would bring endless benefits to one's comprehension of the great path of heaven and earth. Haha, aren't you surprised? That is a stone tablet that our ancestor begged from a Path Master. The stone tablet came from the secret chamber where the Path Master meditated and comprehended the great path. Under the influence of the Path Master's comprehension for a long time, it has unknowingly been mixed with a trace of the Path Master's mysterious energy. Oh! Su Yu's expression was indifferent. Yun Qianshuang shook her head and chuckled. If you are envious, just say it. You always look like you are scheming. Envious? He had the Great Void Cave abode, which allowed him to observe several Path Masters discussing the great path of heaven and earth at close range. Did he need to be envious of a stone tablet that was bestowed by a Path Master? He smiled without saying a word, not explaining himself. Yun Qianshuang brought him to the Four-Symbol Mansion's garden, where a tall man in a white robe was patiently guiding a young man in his training. His cultivation was at the middle stage of the Four-Symbol Divine Realm, and his real age should be close to 100 years old. He was slightly older than Su Yu by about 20 years. By the standards of the Great Beginning Realm, he was quite young. Having a cultivation base at the middle stage of the Four-Symbol Divine Realm was not bad. Tian with your cultivation base and the level 6 laws you have mastered, you should be able to get into the top 100 of the Ecliptic Palace meet this time, and successfully enter the middle palace of the Ecliptic Palace, the middle-aged man said. Laws were also divided according to their strength. For example, the 6 great laws that Su Yu had mastered belonged to the supreme laws of heaven and earth, and were not among the 9 grades. The higher the level of the law, the more difficult it was to comprehend it, and the more powerful it was. Level 6 laws were considered top-notch laws among the 5-star civilizations. Normally, it was quite good for a person from a 5-star civilization to be able to master level 5 laws. The man speaking was the master of the Four-Symbol Mansion, as well as Yun Qianshuang's father, Yun Qianxiong. The young man being guided was Yun Qianshuang's younger brother, Yun Zhantian. Father, don't worry. I will fight to get into the top 50, and bring glory to the Four-Symbol Mansion. Haha, Tian you are ambitious, but don't bite off more than you can chew. The representatives of the other civilizations are extremely powerful, so don't be careless. As the father and son were talking, Yun Qianshuang hurriedly walked over with Su Yu. The two of them sensed something and looked over. Yun Zhantian frowned. Sister, why did you bring an outsider in? Yun Qianshuang laughed. I naturally would not bring other outsiders, but he is different. He is the Tai Chi faction master that I mentioned, the person who possesses the bones of a Path Master. Hearing this, Yun Qianxiong calmly looked at Su Yu, but did not speak. Yun Zhantian looked Su Yu up and down. He is the young faction master of a 5-star civilization that you mentioned? I heard you say that he is only a middle-stage martial emperor with 3 crowns. His talents are not that great. At this moment, Su Yu's cultivation level was restrained, not revealing a single bit of his desolate energy. Hence, no one could see through his cultivation level. They thought he was still stuck in Yun Qianshuang's description. Nowadays, any civilization that produces a martial emperor with 5 crowns can call themselves a 5-star civilization. Look at the faction masters they have chosen. What kind of nobodies are they? Yun Zhantian was not impressed by Su Yu's status as the master of a 5-star civilization. If he wanted to be the master of a 5-star civilization, there were plenty of well-ranked 5-star civilizations that would beg him to be the master. Watch your foul mouth, how can you say that? Yun Qianshuang rolled her eyes at him. He came all the way to the 4 Symbols civilization to treat the ancestor. You should at least show some respect. Pfft. Yun Zhantian was not impressed. Come all the way? You make it sound so nice, but isn't it just for the invitation from the 4 Symbols mansion? Yun Qianshuang was furious. Father, look at him. Yun Qianshuang calmly smiled and waved his hands. Stop fighting. He looked up at Su Yu, looking him up and down. I heard from Qianshuang that you have the bones of a path master and wish to exchange an invitation from the 4 Symbols mansion. Without waiting for Su Yu's reply, Yun Qianshuang continued, All right, I will write one for you now. However, I will add another condition. When you are outside, you cannot say that the 4 Symbols mansion recommended you to participate in the Ecliptic Palace meet. Yun Zhantian nodded. If your ranking falls behind in the Ecliptic Palace meet, and word gets out that you were recommended by the 4 Symbols mansion, the 4 Symbols mansion will lose face. Hence, you are not allowed to mention the 4 Symbols mansion at all. Yun Qianshuang waved his hands, signaling for his son to shut up. Although my son is blunt, his reasoning is not wrong. The 4 Symbols mansion has always only recommended civilizations that are ranked within the top 2,000. This is the first time we have recommended a 5-star civilization that is not ranked 80,000. Hence, I hope you can understand. Although he said he wanted Su Yu to understand, his attitude did not suggest that he was willing to negotiate. Su Yu calmly smiled. I think you might have misunderstood me. I am not here to beg you, but to make a fair exchange. Since you feel wronged, forget it. Su Yu turned and left with his hands clasped behind his back. Yun Qianshuang was furious and ashamed. She had blamed Su Yu for not respecting her father. It turned out that the 4 Symbols mansion had never respected him. Presumably, Su Yu had been treated unfairly by housekeeper Qin, right? Chapter 2026. As she watched Su Yu leave, Yun Qianshuang said angrily, Are you satisfied now? The most important bone of the Tao Master in my 9 bones heart-saving pill, let's see where you'll get it from. Yun Zhantian shrugged disapprovingly and said, Don't worry. Who else would be willing to provide an invitation other than our 4 Symbol mansion? I bet that within 3 days, he'll come begging for our help. What a fool! Yun Qianshuang shook her head and chased after him. She understood Su Yu's character well. Since he had decided to leave, he would never turn back. Some people would not give up their dignity for the sake of benefit. For example, Su Yu. When he chased after them, Su Yu was walking in the crowd, looking at the dreamy and prosperous 4 Symbols civilization expressionlessly. Su Yu, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Yun Qianshuang's eyes were full of apology. Because of what happened to the 4 Symbol mansion, you even encountered danger along the way. I didn't expect father and brother to treat you like this. Su Yu's face was calm, and he said nonchalantly, You're not the one who should be apologizing, so why do you need to blame yourself? Although she said that, she still felt guilty. After a moment of thought, he took out a bronze card. This is? Su Yu did not understand. Divine stones are no longer used in the Ecliptic Palace and half-path civilizations. Many large shops no longer accept divine stones. The mainstream currency is the Tao coin forged by the Ecliptic Palace. The value of one Tao coin is roughly equivalent to 10 billion divine stones. This is a money card issued by a branch of the Ecliptic Palace. There are 200 Tao coins stored inside. You've just arrived in a half-path civilization, so you won't be able to do anything without Tao coins. Take these and use them first. If you don't have enough, come to me. Yun Xianshuang stuffed them into Su Yu's palm. Silver card? Tao coin? Su Yu nodded slightly. He had already considered this when he was in the Taiji sect. Divine stones could easily amount to trillions and trillions, which was no longer enough to satisfy the needs of a top-notch emperor of heaven and earth. It was to be expected that the mainstream currency of the Ecliptic Temple and the half-path civilization would change. Moreover, the cards were easier to purchase and saved a lot of trouble. I don't need the money. Su Yu rejected her tactfully. Goodbye, we will meet again. After bidding farewell to Yun Qianshuang, Su Yu stayed in the Four Symbols civilization for a while. After careful observation, he realized that the market did not use divine stones much. Most of them were Tao coins. Su Yu did not have a single Tao coin on him. It would be more or less difficult for him to traverse the Ecliptic Palace and the half-path civilization. I have to find a way to get some Tao coins, Su Yu said to himself. He arrived at the branch hall set up by the Ecliptic Temple in the Four Symbols civilization. The branch palace had many functions, one of which was exchanging Tao coins. 10 billion divine stones could be exchanged for one Tao coin. The starting exchange amount was 100 Tao coins, which was 1 trillion divine stones. However, Su Yu had handed over most of his divine stones to the Cauldron to develop and grow. His own divine stones were less than 100 billion, so he couldn't exchange for them. Fortunately, the Ecliptic Palace also collected precious items that could be converted into equivalent Tao coins. After some thought, he went to the exchange window for Tao coins. The receptionist was a fox-headed mutated human with an arrogant look in his eyes. He was indifferent to the people who came to exchange for Tao coins. As a member of the Ecliptic Palace, he indeed had the right to be arrogant. I'm very sorry, the Ecliptic Palace only accepts items of high value. This 100,000-year-old divine tree is not one of them, please take it away. In front of Su Yu, a shabby old man held a rare 100,000-year-old divine tree and left resentfully. They don't even take a 100,000-year-old divine tree seriously. The standards of the Ecliptic Palace are not ordinary, Su Yu said to himself. It was his turn. The fox-headed mutated human looked at Su Yu quietly with his green eyes and said lightly, "Do you want to exchange for it with divine stones? Items? Oh, I'll say this in advance. If it's not precious, don't take it out, so as not to delay the time of the people behind you in line," he said without looking at it. It was obvious that he didn't expect Su Yu to take out anything valuable. Su Yu said nothing and took out a water jar of great void. It contained a faint primordial energy. According to the Hunter King and the others, primordial energy was an extremely popular and precious thing in advanced civilizations, especially the Pathmaster, who yearned for it but couldn't get it. What is this? The fox-headed mutated human frowned as he stared at the water jar. Su Yu looked at the crowd nearby and said, "You can have a taste." Taste? The fox-headed mutated human hesitated slightly. As the person in charge of the exchange, it was his duty to examine the items that the guests brought to exchange. However, Su Yu's clothes were ordinary, and he didn't look like he could take out anything valuable. He really didn't want to try something of unknown origin. There was once an examiner who accidentally died after tasting the poisonous liquid. His heart was conflicted, but he was blaming Su Yu. He symbolically took a drop and flicked it into the jar. The taste was plain and bland, just like the most ordinary water. There wasn't even a hint of divine energy. The fox-headed mutated human's eyes turned hostile. Was Su Yu teasing him? However, he suddenly realized something and tasted it carefully. His green eyes blinked and he looked a little surprised. So, he took a second drop and tasted it carefully. His face was full of shock. It's good that you know. You don't have to say it out loud, Suyu said lightly, stopping him in time. The fox-headed mutated human came to his senses, and he looked at Suyu with a completely different expression. He said politely, "Dear sir, in view of the special composition of this water, I have appraised its value to be 100 Tao coins. Are you sure you want to exchange?" Suyu shook his head slightly. The fox-headed mutated human was suddenly anxious. Taichu energy was the Taichu energy that the Path Masters of the Ecliptic Palace were fighting to get. If he could accept it and hand it over to the headquarters of the Ecliptic Palace, he would definitely receive a huge reward. "Sir, please reconsider." Suyu continued, "This jar is just for you to look at. I want to exchange for 10,000 jars. 10,000? The fox-headed mutated human's face changed dramatically, and he was dumbfounded. Suyu asked, "Can't I?" Coming back to his senses, the fox-headed mutated human was ecstatic. "Of course you can. Of course you can." He was extremely excited. He walked out of the counter and called for a subordinate to replace him. He personally received Suyu and said, "Dear sir, please come into our VIP room to talk." As a sub-palace of the Ecliptic Palace, he didn't have to worry too much about them cheating on him. They should still have that bit of credibility. Arriving at the VIP room, the fox-headed mutated human personally served top-grade spiritual tea. What surprised Suyu was that the effects of this spiritual tea were equivalent to a Join elixir. In the outside world, a cup of tea was hard to come by, but now he was receiving Suyu. Knowing that he was in a hurry, Suyu put down a space storage device and said, "Check to see if there's anything missing." The fox-headed mutated human smiled and nodded, politely reaching into the space. 10,000 jars of Taishu were quietly placed there. It was true that every jar contained an abundance of primordial qi. "It's verified." The fox-headed mutated human was excited. If he handed over 10,000 jars, he would definitely be rewarded handsomely. The fox-headed mutated human took out a gold card and said, "This is a $1 million money card. Please keep it well, sir." "Why is it gold?" Suyu didn't understand. The card Yun Qianchuang took out seemed to be bronze. The fox-headed mutated human smiled and said patiently, "There are 4 grades of money cards distributed by the Ecliptic Palace. From lowest to highest, they are the bronze card, the silver card, the gold card, and the crystal card. The standard for a bronze card is to store less than 10,000 Dao coins. A silver card is to store less than 100,000 Dao coins. A gold card needs to be worth 1,000,000 Dao coins. Sir, you have 1,000,000 Dao coins, so you can naturally get a gold card." Suyu frowned slightly. "Can you give me 100 bronze cards?" He had just arrived and was unfamiliar with the place and the people. With a gold card in his hand, wouldn't he attract unwanted attention for no reason? "Sir, there is something you do not know," the fox-headed mutated human said. "Different grades of cards have different privileges. Gold cards have priority in purchasing. Wherever money cards can be used, gold card holders will have priority in purchasing the same item from the same batch of people. Are there any other privileges?" Priority in purchasing was rarely used. Apart from that, gold card holders can challenge the ecliptic roll once a month for free. Suyu pondered. What is the ecliptic roll? The fox-headed mutated human was puzzled. This person had so much primordial energy, so his background should not be simple. How could he not know anything about the Ecliptic Palace? But he did not dare offend Suyu. He immediately said, "The Ecliptic Roll is a list made jointly by all the Ecliptic Palaces. It ranks all the heaven rulers of the Ecliptic Palace. There are 2 requirements to be on the list. First, one has to be a 3-crown emperor. Second, one has to be younger than 200 years old." Suyu listened and nodded slightly. The requirements to be on the list were quite strict. It was not difficult to become a three-crown emperor, but one had to be under 200 years old. That would eliminate most people. Only the heaven rulers cultivated by various powerful forces could become three-crown emperors before 200 years old. Without a powerful background, it was almost impossible to achieve such a level in 200 years. The list ranking is just an empty reputation to me. I have no objections. I don't want it, Suyu said. The fox-headed mutated human was surprised. How can it be an empty reputation? If you can enter the top 100, you can increase the rating of your civilization and raise the ranking of your civilization. You can also receive the corresponding reward. Reward? For example? The fox-headed mutated human said. There are many kinds of rewards, such as Tao coins, treasures containing the Pathmaster's understanding, invitations to the Ecliptic Assembly, and so on. Wait. Invitations to the Ecliptic Assembly? The fox-headed mutated human was surprised. With your status, do you still lack invitations? In his opinion, invitations to the Ecliptic Assembly should be the least attractive of all the rewards of the Ecliptic Roll. After all, those who could enter the top 100 of the Ecliptic Roll were mostly heaven rulers cultivated by the top 100 civilizations. The rest were basically from the top 1,000 to 100 civilizations. In theory, they did not lack invitations to the Ecliptic Assembly. How do I challenge it? Su Yu's eyes shone. The fox-headed mutated human put away his doubts and said, Sir, please come with me. Under his guidance, Su Yu came to another area of the sub-palace. Unlike the crowded hall where the Tao coin exchange was, this place was quite deserted. Chapter 2027. Hu Yun calmly nodded. Alright, step down. I will personally host the challenge. In this area, there was an arena made of special materials. The arena is made of dream crystals, and the images of all the heaven rulers on the ecliptic list are engraved on it. You can choose one of the rankings and try to fight against the image. I will rank you according to the strength you show. Suyu understood and said, Then can I challenge now? Of course. You have a gold card, and you can save 300 Dao coins. May I ask, what rank do you wish to challenge? Number 100. A high ranking was meaningless to Suyu, as long as he could get an invitation to the Ecliptic Palace meet. Even though Hu Yun was mentally prepared and knew that Suyu's strength could not be weak, he was surprised to challenge the top 100. He kindly reminded, Sir, the one in the top 100 is Uya Huanyun of the Tianji civilization, with the strength of a mid-stage 4-crown emperor. It's fine. Suyu waved his hand, indicating for him to begin. Hu Yun's eyes were filled with anticipation as he activated the mechanism. A youth with metallic skin immediately appeared on the arena. His long hair was loose, and he gave off a wild feeling. Begin. Uya Huanyun's projection released the cultivation of a mid-stage 4-crown emperor, and he used a level 6 law of fire. His overall strength was quite good. Suyu did not dare to be careless. He took out the Azura sword and released the strength of an early-stage 4-crown emperor, imbuing the sword with all his power. The 7th style of the demonic sword technique, Bury the Heavens. He used all his strength and swept out with his sword. The extremely sharp sword energy seemed as if it could destroy the heavens and the earth, exploding with a powerful force as it streaked across Uya Huanyun's projection. The projection suddenly trembled, then suddenly disappeared. Hu Yun's pupils shrank slightly, staring at Suyu in shock. He hurriedly said, Sir, you have won. You have defeated Uya Huanyun, and now you are in the top 100 of the ecliptic list. He had expected that Suyu would confidently and calmly challenge the top 100, perhaps because he was certain of victory. But he did not expect that he would be defeated with just one strike. Your true strength should be able to reach the level of the 50th rank, but according to the procedure, you need to challenge the 50th ranked Judo princess in order to raise your rank to the 50th. Suyu kept the Azura sword, jumped off the arena, and said, An empty reputation is meaningless to me, as long as I get the invitation letter for the Ecliptic Palace meet. Hu Yun's face was full of regret. If this place gave birth to a prodigy who made it into the top 50, as the person in charge of the branch palace, Hu Yun would also receive additional rewards from the main palace. However, Su Yu did not care about his reputation, so he could only give up. He took out a golden invitation letter and said, "As one of the top 100, you can receive the best invitation letter. Many thanks." Su Yu accepted it and felt at ease. The invitations that he had imagined to be so difficult to obtain were actually so easy. It seemed that no matter when or where, one's own strength was the deciding factor. Ding! Suddenly, a soft sound entered his ears. Beside the ring, there was a huge stone tablet with hundreds of golden names on it. They were the top 100 rankers of the ecliptic list. At this moment, the last name dimmed and disappeared, leaving behind a blank space. "May I know your name?" As Su Yu pondered this for a moment, he recalled Xia Jingyu and Qin Xiener, then said, "Yu Xian." It was obvious from the name that it was a pseudonym and not his real name. Hu Yun felt a little regretful, as he had wanted to trace Su Yu's origins from his surname. "Alright." Hu Yun took out a special writing brush and wrote the 2 words Yu Xian on the blank space. He came before Su Yu again, thought for a moment, then said, "Mr. Yu Xian, are you an outsider?" "Yes, you are. The palace ship to the Ecliptic Palace needs a month to pass by the 4 Symbols civilization. If Mr. Yu Xian doesn't have a place to stay, you can stay in the Mingxin residence for the time being." Su Yu frowned slightly. "Can't I enter the Ecliptic Palace myself?" Hu Yun was speechless, and he thought to himself, where did this lad come from? He really has no common sense at all. "Mr. Yu Xian, you must be joking. How can the Ecliptic Palace be a place where outsiders can enter at will? Only by taking the palace ship can you enter. All other methods are considered to be forceful entry, and you will have to pay a price." Hearing this, Su Yu suddenly understood. "Alright, but what kind of place is the Mingxin residence?" The Mingxin residence is the property of the Ecliptic Palace's sub-palace. In theory, it is only for the people of the Ecliptic Palace to live in. There are only a few exceptions, such as the master of civilization of a half-path civilization, or people recognized by the sub-palace. Mr. Yu Xian has entered the top 100 of the Ecliptic list in our sub-palace, so you are naturally qualified to stay here. All expenses incurred during the period will be discounted by 50%. Thank you. After asking for directions, Su Yu arrived at the Mingxin residence under Hu Yun's guidance. As the tallest building in the 4 Symbols civilization, it was a giant tree that reached the heavens, reaching the depths of the heavens. The giant tree emitted wisps of the mysterious energy of the Path Master. Training within it had unparalleled benefits in condensing the rules, comparable to the wall of the 4 Symbols mansion. With the golden card in hand and the Ecliptic List nameplate issued by Hu Yun, he successfully moved into the Mingxin residence. The interior of the Mingxin residence was not only luxuriously decorated, but it was also filled with divine energy, several times more than the outside world. Treasures that were difficult to find in the outside world were used as decorations and hung in the corridor. This place could be said to be rich and powerful. But, similarly, the price was extremely high. One night required 100 Dao coins, which was converted to divine stones, which was 1 trillion. This was usually the lifetime savings of the impoverished 4 Crowns Emperor. Even with Su Yu's 50% discount, it was still 50 million divine stones. In the Tai Chi faction, this level of consumption is unimaginable. Su Yu sighed. But, with his current wealth, this level of consumption was easily affordable. He settled down with peace of mind, and at the same time, tried to find ways to increase his strength as much as possible before the ecliptic meeting. Among them, the 8th style of the demonic sword technique, Nameless, was the focus of comprehension. He calmed his heart and immediately immersed himself in it. At the same time, in the nearby Heavenly Mystery Civilization. In a restaurant, 3 people were drinking in a private room. I have benefited a lot from Big Brother Oye's guidance today. Let me offer you a toast to express my gratitude. A beautiful woman smiled as she toasted the man sitting across from her. The man was tall, and his whole body was emitting a metallic luster. He had a heroic expression on his face as he said heartily, "Sister Lon, you flatter me." The abilities of the 3 heroes of the Heavenly Mystery Civilization are almost the same. How can we talk about guidance? It's just an exchange. On the other side, a pale-faced scholar sighed. Big Brother Oye is too modest. In the entire Heavenly Mystery Civilization, you are probably the only one who thinks that the 3 of us are almost the same in terms of abilities. The charming woman smiled bitterly. Big Brother Oye is a powerhouse ranked 100 on the ecliptic list, while we can hardly even make it into the top 200. We are far inferior to you. Oye Huanyun shook his head disapprovingly. There is always someone better out there. I am only standing in the top 100, and I can be kicked down at any time. It's not worth mentioning. One day I will fight my way into the top 10. Only then will I have the right to look down on everyone. The pale-faced scholar said, Big Brother Oye, you don't have to be so humble. Do you know how difficult it is to get into the top 100 of the ecliptic list? The top 100 are firmly controlled by the geniuses nurtured by the Ecliptic Palace. To be able to fight into the top 100 is to bring glory to our civilization. The top 100 of the ecliptic list were mostly controlled by the geniuses nurtured by the Ecliptic Palace. Very few geniuses from other civilizations could fight their way into the top 100. It could be said that Ouya Huanyun's name was earth-shattering, and he had gained face for the half-path children of civilization who had been suppressed by him. You're exaggerating. Oye Huanyun was speaking when his servant suddenly ran over and knocked on the door. The charming woman opened the door and frowned. What's the rush? Your master hasn't drunk enough yet. The servant was out of breath. No. I'm not urging master to go back, but something big has happened. There are rumors outside that the ecliptic list has changed. If it changed, then so be it. Why did you lose your composure? The charming woman did not think much of it. Did the hundreds of rankings change? It's the top 100, the servant said. The charming woman's expression changed slightly. There's such a thing? The top 100 rarely changed. Usually, it would not change even after hundreds of years. Then whose name is it? Its master. He was defeated by someone called the Rain Immortal. Hearing this, the charming woman was finally surprised. Who did it? I think he should be almost 200 years old. If that's the case, it's not a big deal. Big Brother Oye only cultivated for 100 years, while the other party relied on time to settle down. It's not a big deal for him to be a little stronger. No. The outside world is saying that the Rain Immortal is only 80 years old. What? 80 years old? The charming woman was shocked. Ouya Huanyun put down his wine cup and raised his head with a smile. I already said that there's always someone better. I didn't expect him to be defeated so quickly. I think it's very likely that the other party came from the Ecliptic Temple or the top 10 civilizations. Only those places could nurture such a young supreme prodigy. No. The other party succeeded in the Ecliptic Temple of the Four Symbols civilization. This time, Ouya Huanyun was also shocked. The Four Symbols civilization. That civilization that's about to fall out of the top 100? I remember that the strongest prodigy of the current generation of this civilization should be called. The charming woman added in disdain, Yun Zhantian. Yes, that's him. The charming woman snorted. Yun Zhantian is nothing. I can beat him down within 10 moves. How could he defeat Big Brother Oye's projection? The pale-faced scholar nodded. Yes, the possibility of him is very low. Ouya Huanyun slowly stood up and said, This martial arts exchange can't continue anymore. I have to personally go to the ecliptic temple to see what kind of person that person is. I'll also go and see what kind of person it is. The martial arts exchange ended abruptly. After arriving at the ecliptic temple of the Heavenly Legacy civilization, Uya Huanyun paid the fee and came to the arena. He said, "Challenge the 100th place, the Rain Immortal." The person in charge activated a mechanism, and a blurry figure was projected. And he's hiding his identity? Uya Huanyun jumped onto the arena, slightly surprised. Usually, the image would be very clear. However, if the owner of the image wanted to hide their identity, why would the image become blurry?